Ms. Reed, you didn't spray our chairs?
2000. They sent it out as 2022.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be 2023, 24.
All right. On to our Abbeville County School Board workshop for our building construction projects. Thank y'all all for coming. I'll wait on Dr. Gary to get here so we can kind of turn it over to him and our visitors. Look. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. Welcome everyone. So I'll hand it over to you.
All right, very good. So what we'll do tonight is this afternoon is have a discussion regarding some of our building programs that are in play at this point. And we have members with LS3P and Thompson Turner with us that are going to walk us through, I think specifically, the new design that you guys received last week, I believe it was, for Dixie High School, because one thing that is imperative at this point, Abbeville and the Career Center buildings have been designed, and I think, and Ms. Kirk, you helped me make sure I say it correct, they would be ready to go to schematic design, is that correct?
So we have just received from LS3P a 50% design development set that we are pricing against. So we're just constantly pricing and iterating through what we're doing. And then Emily, you let me know when you think you're gonna finish DD. I can't remember that date.
We are printing today.
For final DDs.
Yeah, so by the end of the week, we'll have a final DD package ready to go.
This is
So
really
we'll have
incredible.
it to,
Fast work.
Right.
So,
So I say all that, 2 of our 3 projects are ready to go as of end of the week.
Yep.
Dixie,
well, not ready to go.
No,
They'll be at DDs.
ready to move to the next
That's correct.
level. Yes, that's what I
I
meant.
just want to make sure.
Yep.
And we're still going to get all the way through construction documents.
And I was ready to break ground, Ms.
We're
Kirk.
we can be competitive about schedule and budget at a full DD set.
Okay.
And then we'll make adjustments as needed if we are over budget or if there anything that needs to be tweaked. And then when we move into construction documents, we'll competitively price it out, get the community involved, make sure we, get a lot of participation and move into, getting the final contracts set up so that we can start. As they're pulling off the campus the last day of school.
All right, so here's the deal. Dixie is the one not settled at this point. And I want to thank Mr. Dunn for giving us a proposal that we put in play to see if that was feasible to do. And I think our design team will speak to that tonight. And that helps us greatly on the site as far as usability of the site, making it much more efficient, and I think probably even much more safer. So that's the part that we have not settled on to keep our design folks moving, because that scope kept changing. We need, if possible tonight, to get that settled so we can move like we have, or are now ready with Abbeville and the Career Center. So at this point, let me turn it over. I guess, Ms. Kite, do you want to start? Sure. And Diddy, y'all step in wherever you need to.
I think we've got some drawings to show you. I can give you a little bit of an update of the last sort of 30 days on the other 2 projects. We did talk about printing today, design development drawings. We've met with OSF on the schematic design review, which is what was getting ready to happen at the last board meeting. That happened about a week and a half ago now, and we've gotten some good feedback from OSF, which we've incorporated into this next round of submittal that we'll hopefully get to OSF by the end of the week. That's for Abbeville High School and the Career Center. I think we are a step away from getting concurrence letters from SCDOT on those 2 campuses as well. We've worked with David Meekins, who is Mark Falk's replacement, and that's now gone to his supervisor to get those concurrence letters that are required issued for those 2 schools. I think we are at Dixie. That's sort of, as Dr. Gary said, the big thing that we want to talk about today. After the last board meeting, there was a lot of feedback, and we were certainly, admittedly on our end, not quite settled on how the site was coming together. And so that was the big driver for rethinking how we were approaching the new square footage that we need on this campus. And we know we have a really tight site, and it was becoming a real challenge to meet all of DOT's objectives for separating student and car and bus traffic on that campus without losing much needed parking and with also making room for a new building. And so we have explored a 3-story school building option that would encompass all of the square footage and the needed spaces that we have at Dixie High School, consolidating the footprint of our building in a nice sort of compact 3-story building that frees up a lot more of the site where the old building, the old wings are that we're going to be demolishing to recoup some of that parking that we're going to lose as part of the DOT improvements to the drop-off and pickup scenario on the site for buses and for cars. And so that option has gained a lot of traction and a lot of momentum. I think we feel really good about that. We've done some additional programming with Mr. Prescott and have sort of, I think, landed on a number of classrooms that seems to cover all of the bases and meet the objectives for having both the high school and eventual, to some degree, middle school kids on this campus as well. And we've worked through, again, with David Meekins on some site solutions for drop-off and pickup that we think get closer to both meeting the needs for the district, but also being responsible for the budget and also for protecting the parking capacity on the site as well. And so that's sort of where we land. It improves the phasing of this project pretty significantly because we can start building construction first without having to demolish those existing wings. That allows operations of the school to continue in a normal fashion until we're done with the new building, and so we wouldn't have to demolish any of those existing services that we need at the school to continue until have built their replacement spaces in the new building. And so it simplifies construction quite a bit on the campus as well. So we're not starting right out of the gate with demolishing things in classrooms that were currently in use. So that's kind of been an improvement to this concept as well. So that's the big thing. We do need a height variance from the town of Due West because our building exceeds the height limit for that particular zoning district. We've gotten some verbal approval from Due West that variance will be approved when we apply for it. We've given them some preliminary drawings that show the height of our building in the context of the rest of the school campus. And we've gotten some verbal confirmation that variance will be approved. And so that will allow us to, the sort of last big box to check in terms of vetting the idea around all the different factors with OSF. They've seen preliminary iterations of the floor plan as well. So we've got some consensus from OSF and from DOT and from the town of Due West that the option is feasible from all those perspectives as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we've got some slides. We can look at it. The slides reflect the things that were in your packet from earlier, from late last week.
Would you like to see that?
Would it suit y'all to jump into that?
Matt, did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, when Matt pulls those up, let's go there.
Let's go ahead and see, go to the next slide. If there's a clicker, I'm happy to use it. Yeah, this is a good place to start if you back up kind of one slide. This is page 2. We'll start here. This is sort of a compressed stacking of 3 floors. The plan on the bottom with the big sort of cyan colored box in the middle, that's the first floor. That cyan box is the cafeteria. The kitchen is in purple on the left of that wing, and then the administration areas and student restrooms are to the right of the cafeteria. That administration end of the building is the closest to the rest of the part of the site in terms of its relationship to what will become the middle school building and the sort of courtyard spaces made in the back of the campus between the gym and where the band room and things are. And so the main entry point for the building would be at that end by those administrative offices from students that are dropped off both from buses and cars in the back part of the site. They would come in from that direction. The upper 2 floors are stacked classroom wings with the pink colored boxes are the science classrooms, 2 on the 2nd floor and 1 on the 3rd floor, and then the remainder of the green boxes are all classroom space. There is some teacher support areas and some administrative offices on those upper floors that will help with supervision of students so that we can place some of those administrators and guidance counselors. I think we've gotten some feedback from Mr. Prescott and some others regarding the plan, and I think that there's room to make sure that we've got all the bases covered with regards to program. I think we're missing an office, for example, in the admin suite that we'll need to factor in for one of the administrators on campus. But I think what is, I think very successful about this is that it really is a nice, concise footprint. It allows us the opportunity to place it in the front parking lot where we can build without really interrupting most of the school day operations before we have to really kind of get into the middle of the site with other things. And so it's a very efficient floor plan, and it allows us to maximize the amount of program area that we have and that we can build on the Dixie campus, and sort of being sensitive to the budget that we have. And so that's the sort of big picture of the floor plans. I think there's a site plan in here as well. That might be the next page. Go ahead.
I have a question. I can't read it on this page, and I can't read it up there. The square footage of the classrooms.
The square footage of the classrooms are 800 square feet gross, which includes wall space. So when we plan and we program the overall square footage of the building, I think the net square footage that results from that when we look just inside the perimeter of each classroom is in the neighborhood of 450 to 460 square feet. We can fit 28 students in those classrooms. That's sort of been the
756.
756. What did I say?
450.
Oh, those are really, really big walls.
Everybody was looking at you.
I definitely did not mean it. I can prove it, I promise. Those are really big walls.
756 is what you're saying.
750 to 760 square feet is the ballpark of what that square footage is in those classrooms.
28 students.
We planned those classrooms for 28 students. We get into those super big weeds of what the building code says about those classrooms. They could fit 37 students in there just from an occupancy calculation, which is far more than we would ever have in a classroom setting for certain, and we typically would plan around those 28 students that we can fit in those classrooms. And I think the science labs are 13 or 1,400 square feet. I can't quite remember off the top of my head what those are, but that's what we've been sort of planning this whole time.
What's the current size, and what's the size of the ones that Abbeville proposed?
I'd have to look for sure. I think they're all in the ballpark of around the same 800 to 750 in that respect. I'd have to go back and look at the floor plan.
From what I remember at Abbeville, they netted down to about the same. I think it was
Yeah.
756. I think is what y'all had on there before. I remember.
Well, and it's also the same at both schools.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
everything that we
everything's the same.
program from Abbeville to Dixie is all translatable in terms of square footage. So we're planning around the same classroom size, the same science lab size, same occupant count in the cafeterias in both schools. We're targeting around being able to seat 300 students in the cafeterias at both schools, which would exceed really what you'd have for three lunches if you get to that place where you have enough students. To warrant 3 lunches, we could certainly accommodate way more than the planned number of students enrolled at both schools with 300 people in the cafeteria.
Do you know what the class size is now, an average at Dixie? Like what?
In
I'm
terms
just trying to
of the number
picture
of
it. Yeah.
students?
No, it's not as far
Oh,
as
Square
the
footage.
square
The
footage.
square footage, I think they're all comparable to the ones that we've got. We can double check for sure. We've certainly got the plans for both schools. Typically in a school, there's probably a variety of square
Right, there
footages
is.
of
The 8th grade
classrooms.
wing is extremely small.
The average classroom space is, set, was it 780, somewhere in there right now?
Yeah.
Between 780 and 790.
And we don't have any classes with 28 students, core classes. I know we do chorus and things of that nature, but,
We do
Math.
over here, yeah.
Yeah.
so we're not even in that capacity anyway.
And Mr. Prescott, is this a good layout so far?
It's much improved over the last one. And I like the parking, and I like the area for future growth of the campus if we need to grow.
Yeah.
So I've been very, very pleased.
I have another question. Sorry, I'm just trying to picture it and
Sure, for
understand
sure.
it. What does it look like when you're actually in there? I'm just trying to look at this picture and picture it. But I'm just looking at the flow because these students are going to be using some of the other facilities. They're going to be in and out, and then 400 students up these stairs. It looks. Do they have to go in that vestibule through those double doors and then through a single door and up those?
Can you flip back one slide?
And expand it to Matt, if you would,
Yeah.
to that bottom.
I mean, it looks tight to me, but I don't know. I don't know what that actually
Wow.
looks like when you have 400 bodies
Yeah.
coming in and out of those.
Typically, we would route those students, if you pan, sort of scroll down to the first floor, which is right at the bottom of the sheet. There you go. Typically, we would route those students through the vestibule, in large parts because of the nature of the school safety, sort of best practices. I think there's opportunity for us to look at that as having more doors that are available at certain times of the day. We've done that in other school situations where along the rest of that hallway that goes back towards the stair that's up in the corner there, we could put additional doors in there that would be available for use during drop off in the morning and class changes and things like that. I think that's largely an operational thing that we'd want to talk to folks at the school and at the district level in terms of what what we want school safety practices to be.
That's kind of
In terms of controlling who's allowed kind of in and out of the building. We've got to be beholden to the building code with regards to the size of stairs for exiting, for example. We've got some work to do. I think Mr. Prescott noted some of the same concerns that you had in an email earlier this week. I think there's room for us to make sure that we've got stairs that are big enough for all the kids to go up and down, and doors that for all the kids in terms of high traffic times and times of the day where they're changing classes and arriving to campus and things like that. I don't think that it fundamentally needs to change the approach, but certainly we've taken the other two schools, for example, we met today with science lab, science teachers, media center, career center teachers to layer onto the thing that we've started to collect additional information that we need to make sure that that we take the design sort of to the next step. And so I think some of those things are things that we would continue to talk with the school folks about and to continue to build on in terms of making sure that we don't create a situation that's not workable.
But they can also use the stairs to the left from the third to the second floor, right?
Yes, during the normal school day, the circulation can happen on both stairs between the two floors of classrooms. It is a little bit of a challenge, and one of the things that we were very mindful of is not over programming circulation space, right? That square footage that doesn't get you more classrooms. And so that stair, getting to the first floor would be an exit-only situation that would be required by the code. So the primary circulation to the cafeteria level of the building would be from the stair in the upper right corner in this particular case. I'm sure there's a solution that would fix that, but we're gonna add hallway space somehow to get to a stair at the other end of the building, which is required for the upper two floors.
You hadn't said anything about handicapped students.
There's an elevator in the building, so all 3 floors would be accessible to all students. And the route from getting through the site would be accessible as well, so we've got to provide accessibility from where those students are dropped off, all the way to the buildings in that particular case as well. So we'd make modifications as necessary to get those students from where they might be dropped off, either from a bus or from as a car rider. So the building would be fully accessible.
And if I understand right, the actual, not cafeteria and kitchen, the actual just cafeteria is a little larger at Dixie now because of the scale.
So both schools we've planned around seating 300 students at a time, which is quite a bit bigger, I think, than what your capacity is at either of the cafeterias currently. The nature of stacking floors on top of each other, there's a little bit of ebb and flow that happens to make sure that those footprints become really efficient. It is a careful balance of what happens on the upper floors and what happens on the lower floor. So in terms of the exact square footage between Abbeville and Dixie, there's probably some minor variation in those cafeterias by the nature of the way that the plans are working out. But that would be still planning around those 300 students in each of those places. But it's far more efficient to keep those 3 floors stacked without building extra on the top that we don't need or extra on the bottom that we don't need that would translate into floors above in terms of efficiency. And so we're trying to be sensitive to that as well. And the more straightforward it is, the more efficient it gets built, which certainly helps us on the schedule standpoint.
So that was one question I had, was on the square footages. You know, I think the previous conceptual plans or schematic plans, it didn't indicate the square footage. I think going back to some of the programming notes from August, they were being shown at 800 square foot in the classroom. Now, I know on the last plan, the cafeteria was 5,500, so that was some of the concerns I passed along.
Yeah,
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about with the footprint.
yeah. Well, I
is-
think, yeah, and you know, cafeterias, I think the seating capacity is certainly a driver there, and I think that, we're certainly comfortable with a square footage if we can meet the seating capacity, and so that's something that we've been trying to be, pretty mindful of as we go through. I've asked our folks in the office today to double check those numbers, to make sure that we do have the same capacity at both of the schools. Certainly the kitchens are also comparable. They've got to serve around the same number of lunches, and we would certainly do those, in the same way.
The 5,500, if I'm not mistaken, Jenny, was included the kitchen space, is that correct?
So I'm understanding this question now. I thought you were originally comparing the old cafeteria to remain. You're talking about the previous program.
Yeah, between
So
the
original
plans
program,
presented
we
in
had talked about
January.
doing 5,500 feet, that's how we had allocated the spaces. I don't know exactly how y'all calculated this.
It's a tad over
5,000,
5,000.
If it went, it's just only the blue area.
So the
is how
blue
y'all-
area is that square footage right there.
Right.
So that's what we would be comparing. I think in those original programs, the kitchen was additional square footage. I would certainly say 5,500 is not big enough to do kitchen and seat.
Yeah. And the original that's
Yeah.
remained, 5,500 is what we're demoing, or we were going to demo. It included the kitchen and the cafeteria. But what he's saying is that in one of our original programs, from the very beginning, before you were here,
Mhm.
we did say that the seating, we were gonna have 5,500 feet
Yeah.
in the cafeteria and
Well, I think that was even, I think that was
4,000
in
in
the
the
January
kitchen.
plans. I think that was in the January.
But we're technically a little
I
bit
don't
bigger
know.
in the kitchen now, right?
Yeah.
How much?
Well, and we've got some work to do
Yeah,
to lay
it kinda looks
equipment
like-
out, and so there's some
Yeah.
flexibility in there. That line
Yeah.
between the two can move.
Right.
I
So-
think, in terms of, you know, once we get, what we don't wanna do is undersize the kitchen and then the equipment doesn't fit. And so I think we're being a little bit conservative there to make
Right.
sure that we can get a good kitchen layout to work.
So on the limitation which you're talking about with stacking, that's because essentially we have load bearing walls, I guess, on top of one another. We can't split a wall, so to speak.
We can't, and we also, you know, we've got, a good bit of administrative areas that we wanna maintain, and so what I think programmatically works, it doesn't make sense to put a cafeteria on an upper floor, obviously because of its need for the kitchen and the loading and unloading and deliveries and all of that stuff. It makes sense for admin to be on the main floor where kids are coming and going, and where visitors would come and go from there. And so from a programmatic breakdown, we want to try to get kitchen, cafeteria, and admin to fit on a first floor that also fits classrooms on a second floor and classrooms on a third floor in the most efficient way that we can. And so if classroom size wants to grow, for example, if we think that 750 is not big enough, then those floors, that's going to continue to grow, and that would have impact on the lower floor as well, because we would want the lower floor to be the same size as the upper floors.
You know, and one thing you didn't have on your previous option was this nice gated outdoor seating area, which I think a lot of your students are really gonna love. So that adds,
Yeah.
of course, more seating space.
There need to be some kind of wall between that and the loading area, just FYI.
Well, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, we would definitely want to screen that. I think its relationship, if we go to the next page where the site plan is, you'll also see there's a really nice, relationship between, so there's really strong pedestrian connection from this new building, that outdoor seating, towards the east part of the plan into those spaces that are kind of in the back courtyard and where the drop-offs are gonna be, where we're not crossing traffic all the time either. This plan does a nice job of keeping parking to the perimeter and allowing a really pedestrian-friendly
Yeah, that whole
relationship
internal area.
that whole way through for students coming from this building into the rest of the campus and vice versa. They're gonna be dropped off in the back by where the band room is now, and so they can get to their classrooms, really any of those buildings, without having to cross any traffic.
So a question I have, if more space were needed left to right for whatever reason, as you move along to finalize these plans, what are the limitations? Is it setback on one side, is it?
We will have some setback. Right now, the building is shown at the front setback, so that's
Okay.
as far to the front as we can go. We've got some room to move side to side. One of the things we thought would be of value to the campus is to have a small amount of parking between the two buildings for visitors. That way you don't have visitors coming all the way clear back into your site, which is a little bit of a safety challenge because it's difficult to supervise those parking lots potentially, so that visitors would have nice access from Main Street. The amount of that parking, there's some flexibility there. If we wanted to just do a single stack of parking with an entry drive right there, and the building wanted to shift closer to the middle school, we want to obviously keep a drive aisle on the left there from Main Street. That would be the primary in and out for students and teachers that are parking in that lot back there. And so we've got some flexibility there. And if we're looking at, a future expansion, for example, if we wanted to add classrooms to that wing, that's been in our minds as in terms of how we get this building to fit in that parking lot in the best way for now, but also that doesn't limit us in the future if possible.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
that left side, is it 30, well, it was like there was maybe a 5-foot buffer and it was
Yeah.
35 feet.
Yeah.
It's 35 is like the
And our
limit.
driveways, I don't think are, have the same limitations in terms of setback, and so we would work from there for building
Right,
setback.
it's like a
but,
side yard.
But what we don't wanna do is to force a future addition on top of a driveway that we need either. And so we are finessing that, and we're looking and refining that middle parking lot is the biggest variable there that we can control in terms of getting the building closer to the middle school building. But you can also see we've shown the existing cafeteria there. There were some discussions about keeping that and not demolishing it. I think there's strong value there. That's a similar strategy that we're taking at the Abbeville campus as well. That existing cafeteria is really tucked into some other stuff, and it's probably harder to demolish it than it is to just keep it, and it's nice multi-purpose space that you gain for all the students really. And so we've got really good relationship between those buildings, so we're not getting too close to that existing cafeteria. So we're pretty confident that those things fit nicely together and don't really limit flexibility in terms of how the new building needs to work there.
Yeah, that 29 feet from the back of the new building to the front of the existing, is that a magic number, or is that just kind
That's
of
what
where
it
it
ended up being. It's a really nice number, from a building code standpoint. I won't bore you with the complexities of, what the code tells us about those things, but in terms of 29 feet's a good number there that makes what we wanna do really straightforward. If we were to start, the closer we get to that existing building, the more work it takes us to get those two buildings to relate to each other in a way that the code likes. But at 29 feet, we've got, pretty much flexibility to do what we want with our new building without impacting the existing.
So, one more question. In the space that will be reconfigured where the kitchen and cafeteria are now, things that I know that we've had some loose discussions on, or some points have been made, that there would need to be restrooms added to that area. Because there are none now. The restrooms for the gymnasium for the public are down the hall where those rooms will be demoed.
Yeah.
So that's like a definite, I don't see any way around that. And then, something could be done to make an entrance. The entranceway the current entranceway will be gone, demoed with part of that construction, as I understand it. Unless that can be salvaged, it looks like it would project into the parking area, so to speak. So I would say that needs to go. Definite restrooms, and then as far as concessions, what I've been told is, they need an area to store their drink cooler and some other items, but, it would be nice in some way, just my thought is in that open space area somewhere, is you can knock that wall out or use one of the existing ones. They have one of those roll-ups. Just where they've got a space that they can just keep stuff secure. Because I know they're having to go over there just because I'm inherently involved in this, one of my wife. They're going over there and having to, drag the drink cooler out of a space that's way down the hall. Anyway, it'd be nice to have that secured in one location right there in the corridor where it is. But that's the only two things I've really got to have for that space. I think the use of that space is a great idea.
And I would like to tackle that
Sure.
with our maintenance staff if possible, because what I'm afraid of is that this scope keeps growing that budget is gonna keep growing and outgrow us, so I agree 100% with what you're saying. I just think we need to tackle that with our group.
Mr. Reed, you gonna do that for us? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a minor retrofit really to the area.
I mean, that restrooms are inherently costly, more
Yeah.
so than building a classroom space. There's a kitchen there, so we know there's plumbing and utilities in that location already. And certainly, we've had conversations, Thompson Turner and us, about the magnitude of really both schools, and to what extent will there be budget to do some minor renovations to those two existing spaces that would become a multi-purpose kind of a space, and what to do with the sort of leftover kitchen. So we're certainly open to having that conversation, and ultimately y'all's can set the budget however you would like to, and we will do what you want us to do at that point. But,
And how does this new design affect the budget?
well, we have added, since our last presentation, 4 classrooms. And so our square footage is bigger than it was. We're at about 45,800 square feet. And so we are tracking, largely that's in classroom space and the nature of just how a 3-story building works with stairwells and elevators and hallways and things like that. I think that's a really efficient way to build a 3-story building with the number of classrooms that we need, but there are 4 more classrooms in this building than there were a month ago. And that's based on feedback from the school folks about who's gonna be where and what classrooms and what curriculum needs to be supported. And so we are bigger. Bigger doesn't usually fit in the same budget. And Thompson Turner has been pricing, I think, every single day since we were here last, for sure. And so we can, I'll let Jenny speak to the specifics of that if there are any, but we are bigger, and so bigger is always a concern in the budget.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, kind of common sense tells you, we're going up further with the, you know, originally we were 2-story with 19 classrooms, and now we're 3-story with 23 classrooms. So, yeah, we're gaining efficiency of
There's
space.
efficiency in how we use the site, there's efficiency in how we're building the building. I don't think that's gonna be a wash.
Probably won't be a wash, but then there were also, but I want to say also there were modular units being planned or at least budgeted for in the back of somebody's head.
Yep, and we've taken that out.
So that can get going,
Yeah, we
because we
took
can
that out.
use the existing classrooms,
Yeah.
till we get to that point, so. I mean, I think it's a great use of space, and, I mean, for the taxpayer overall, I think it's a great plan overall.
Any other questions other than,
That's some site questions.
Can you
There are.
elaborate on the budget? Or do
Well,
do you have another
What
question?
we're hoping to do is get your blessing on this revised plan and layout, and then price it in more detail from this set of drawings. Now, the square foot, because for instance, as they are working out the details of how this all lays out, the square foot just keep ebbing and flowing. And so, the point of our exercise is not to say, this is your new revised building cost, this is what we advise you to get for additional budgeting. And then we're still gonna work closely with LS3B for all 3 projects to design within the budgets and get you as much efficiency and bang for your buck as you can and add what we can as we can. But I don't wanna advise you all on, so for instance, how much those acquisition bonds should be, or how much extra you should get until we really are able to price this in more detail with the sub-market. We have some stuff out in the subs right now, actually. And then also getting some more definitive information on the site work. Of course, it definitely is gonna be, to add these classrooms, more cost effective to add them in this layout than it would have been in the other layouts.
Yeah,
This is really
sure.
great. We have taken out the cost for, I think we had over $1 million in there for the portables.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is price this and then come back and advise you.
Yeah.
But I think between the 2 sites and this addition, I mean, it could be upwards of $5 million that we're thinking additional from what your original budget was. Could we keep squeezing it? Yeah, but I think what would be more advisable is to squeeze these bonds as much as you possibly can, and then, you know, because we're carrying construction contingency, as we move into construction, whatever we're not spending in that capacity, once we get the building dried in, we can say, okay, well now, let's look at this money to help Dr. Gary and his team facilitate work on, you know, these bathrooms or whatever extra needs there may be at Abbeville. they can use that contingency for that as well.
So, you know, when you kind of mentioned $5 million, but that's $5 million, it is not cost $5 million more dollars to add 4 more classrooms. I think that's pretty clear.
Well, so what happened.
But there are some other things y'all running into.
What I scaled, I scaled everything up. So what I did is that when I helped advise Dr. Gary and you on developing your bond referendum, I didn't help him just develop the costs for, the hard costs for construction. I also helped him develop costs for AE, for testing, for furniture, for technology. And all of those costs are based on a factor of either construction costs or square footage. So I wanna make sure that we're safe with all of those things. If you're scaling up, that you still are also scaling up with your furniture and your technology. And so I scaled those budgets up too. Do you have to spend that? No, it's for your decision, Dr. Gary's decision if you're gonna spend that money, but I just don't want us to say, okay, we only need $2 more million or $3 more million, and then you're not gonna have enough. And so I also wanna do the same thing with wherever we landed Abbeville's final square footages compared to where we were before, and just you're basically just reshifting the money around.
Yeah, so you're looking, I just want to be clear, you're looking for kind of a nod, I guess, because we don't have this as an action item tonight for any reason, but you're looking at us for a nod on, hey, we kind of like this plan, or we want to see this change, so that y'all can progress this forward.
Yeah.
Okay?
And there's a couple of things I want to get to a little bit more site details, because there's been some comments about that. But before we do that, I want to clarify one thing about the floor plan and the number of classrooms. In the previous plan, which you'll remember sort of this L-shaped thing with a 2-story piece that kind of runs back towards where the new athletic building is under construction. With the 19 classroom plan that we had in the last board meeting, that plan fits with the athletic building that's under construction and the 19 classrooms and the L-shaped thing with the kitchen and the cafeteria. That fits. If we need 23 classrooms, we start to not fit very gracefully, and we get to where we're encroaching, or we have to sort of jog our building around that athletic building there as well. And I think there's been a lot of conversation about that, and whether or not the building was fitting. It took us a minute to get the survey information and to get that athletic building information, but the 19 classroom solution, if we went back to that plan, fits with the athletic building where it is. 23 classrooms is we're gonna rethink if we depart from a 3-story option.
Right.
I certainly think building 23 classrooms in this option is more efficient and more cost effective than building it in another solution that is closer to what we had before. So that's sort of the big picture of that. I think some of the feedback that Mr. Prescott has provided with regards to the administrative areas and offices and concerns around circulation and the size of the stairs and the doors and things like that, with a nod today that says draw a 3-story building with 23 classrooms in it, we can work through those things with Mr. Prescott and allow the project to move forward. With feedback that we've already received from DOT, which we can talk about, and I think maybe there's one more slide that shows a little bit of a zoom out of the Dixie campus. If we can start to talk about the circulation and what DOT has worked through with us with regards to basically 3 types of traffic on campus: buses, parent drop-off, and student and teacher parking, and student drivers that come to campus. And so the first thing that we can talk about, which I think is helping us, bus parking was a bit of a challenge, if you recall, at the last meeting. It was really kind of eating up a lot of parking, and we were struggling to fit a car drop-off lane and a bus drop-off lane very gracefully on the site with the building that we have. And so one of the things that we've worked through with DOT is allowing the buses to stay where they are. There's some cost efficiency in that. There's certainly some site use efficiency in that. With some minor improvements, you'll see that dark blue loop that's kind of around that bus parking lot right now. I think currently your students are loading where buses are parked, and so they're walking from the school buildings to that parking lot and loading buses where they're parked. With some minor modifications on a loop situation, you'll see that sort of yellow dashed line inside the blue there. That's the amount of stacking length that would be required if we stacked all of the buses around a curb with a sidewalk on it to allow students to load from a sidewalk in a stacked kind of condition with the buses. There would be an operational crosswalk that would cross the parent drop-off area right now, which I think, Dr. Gary, is already happening on campus because of the student buses right there. So there's some efficiency in that and allowing us to not eat up so much site with a bus drive by doing some minor modifications in the current bus parking lot to allow some better safety with sidewalks for students to travel on and to load from buses that are stacked along that loop instead of in the parking lot. So that's the first thing that we've talked to DOT about that they were certainly open to. They asked us to review that option with OSF, which we did, and we got some favorable response from Ralph also on that. Ralph Jenkins is our reviewer for these projects. So that's one piece. The second piece is the pink line that you see. If we zoom out just a little bit, you'll see that is the car loop. We've drawn this car loop about 3 or 4 different ways. All technically work. Some are better than others. There's some discussions about acquisition of the property to the south of this, off the slide there to below the baseball field. One option is to allow a new driveway in off of that road on that adjacent property, and then we could do this sort of U-shaped parking where we drop off at the back of the buildings on the campus and exit back out onto the driveway, similar to what the loop is showing now without having to sort of snake our way between the fields. We've shown another option at one point where we kind of snake our way through the existing practice field. That was no one's favorite for obvious reasons. That was not a very good idea. We've also shown an option where we enter at the current driveway entrance, which would be between the bus parking and the existing buildings, and to come and follow the pink down toward between the football field and the baseball field, do a little circle turnaround, and then go back out the same way that we came in. So we would have two-way traffic on that driveway. All of those options work. All of those options will give us the stacking that we need to accommodate the number of cars we're expecting on the campus. Some of it is a little bit contingent on whether or not there's additional property that can be acquired. That's one factor and variable. And the other is you guys tell us which one you like the best from an operational standpoint, and we can work on it. We've got a little bit of concern between the two fields from right to left where the pink is sort of vertical right there. It says car line. We don't want to impact the existing fields, existing bleachers, existing grading in there. There's some grade changes between those two fields. And so the idea that we're going to try to build a really wide thing with a lot of parking in between those fields, I think is a little bit problematic. But in terms, we do think we can come in and out by going through and sort of turning around at the bottom of that in between those two things. So,
Mr. Prescott, how does that work for you?
I don't think it's a great solution for the amount of property that we have and the requirements that they have.
If we could purchase the land, it would solve our problem. And that is not a no. That is they're trying to determine an asking price, selling price.
So that's in the works.
So I have had,
Where's the property at?
if
The
you
side,
can,
on the
if
back
it
side.
may
See
be
the
off
tree
of our
line?
screen. Yeah.
this tree line
Okay, that tree line
is
right there.
what I'm after. Let's see, get my bearings right, would be like right here.
Okay.
This
yes.
direction, basically 5 acres right there.
I got you.
That gets us back out. Is that Abbeville Street? Okay. Back out to Abbeville Street access. And I have met with him.
So,
I don't know what he's gonna ask.
So I don't want to interrupt anything, but I'm just worried about, no, I'm not worried about the potential, but I'm worried about having that discussion here and now
Yeah.
for contractual
Yeah.
reasons.
I shouldn't ask that question, you're right. That's-
Yeah, no, that was a good question. The point I wanted to make, I think the cul-de-sac idea, yeah, because the only way that this line works is it's gotta go over the existing track, as far as I can tell. And
Yeah,
so,
it's to
I mean,
snake
you
in
get
between
a third
fields
away of getting that
is
paved
tight.
track that we've been talking about, but then when you come out between the softball field and football bleachers there, that aerial image there is a little bit dated. I was out there just looking at that the other day. I'm not gonna say you couldn't fit it in between, but it is
It's tight.
super tight.
Bad.
It's super tight, and there's some track facilities, I think there are shot put, throw, and that type things right there now, so that'd have to be moved. Plus, that means it just eats up that much more of the practice field.
So you think you come down through there, when you get just to the home plate area of the baseball field, make a turnaround right there in that loop?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that
yeah,
was
so
the
you
thought.
come in.
You hate to redirect them right back through, but I
Cul-de-sac,
see that.
yeah.
And that's a function of needing enough length in terms of the
To get
stacking.
'em-
So you would go all the way through that sequence and down to the cul-de-sac and back up before you were in the drop-off.
Yeah.
So the drop-off would be at the very end of that line.
So it's on the right-hand side of the
It
car.
would be on the right-hand side of the car, closest to the pedestrian side of the
Kind of like what we
campus.
do in Longhorn.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
We're on the side of the
Yeah,
building.
go to the side of the.
Yeah, I've seen roads built out in the middle of fields,
Yeah, I
just
see, yeah.
stacking, you know?
I think the trade-off with that solution is we need more real estate between the football field and the baseball field to get two-way traffic to fit there. That's a little bit of a concern.
Yeah,
But in the absence of adjacent property, that's probably the best of all the options.
yeah.
With adjacent property, that becomes a one-way loop, and then that road gets narrower between those two fields.
And one good thing is you're using your existing entrance and exit that DOT's already approved, that we won't have to go back through an encroachment process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would definitely help, because that was already grandfathered in.
Wish we could get
So-
that
We have
pipe
about
fixed
15
under that
more
road. I'm worried that thing's gonna collapse.
We have about 15
Well, if
minutes
you
left.
drive that, just
The pipe,
hold
you
another,
said?
yeah, that thing, you know, they filled it with concrete. Yeah, I don't know if that's a DOT issue or not.
It was.
Yeah, that,
Mr. Reed, do you know that pipe underneath the road? Is that
it's just in
DOT?
bad shape, you know, it's sag down. If you pull in there, you about knock your teeth off. But I know last year they had, something collapsed in there and they had to come in there and dump some concrete. I don't know who did it. Was that
Did you find that out for us, Mr. Reed?
It is, but
Yeah.
we fixed it this time because we had to get it fixed the day before.
Yeah, it was an emergency repair.
Higher power.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have one.
Okay.
I hate to go back to that, but $5 million plus the million that you're saving for so each classroom's like $1.25 million?
Okay, no,
Okay,
this is why
sorry.
it's so dangerous to talk about things in terms of cost per square foot, and this is why I always preach that. So, let's talk about how square footage is ebbed and flowed and changed, because when LS3P was programming this from the very beginning, they were programming at very, very high level, in a vacuum, without having spoken to any of your administration, any of your principals, anything, right? So, just so everyone understands, the difference, and this is where I've been sitting here because I knew this was going to come this question.
You saw it on my face.
I knew you were coming back to it. Okay, I'm comparing the square footages of where we were when we all agreed to, and I'm saying we because we're a team here, I feel like we're a family now, right? When we agreed to accept the state's money and proceed forward with the same program, more or less, we changed it, right, that you had on the ballot for the bond referendum. That program at that time, we outlined a certain number of classrooms and a certain number of square feet for each of the schools. It was very quickly put together, okay? At that time, the total square footage that we were adding, including the kitchen, the cafeteria, and the classrooms at Dixie, was around a little over 35,000 feet. At Abbeville, it was just shy of 60,000 feet. Well, now that they have reprogrammed all of this, tried to make it as efficient as possible, because I even kind of beat her up a little bit when she came back the first time, talked to the principals, fit everything in, Abbeville is actually at almost 63.5, so they actually are more. They're about 4,800 feet more than where they were before. But this is why it's also important not to get married to square footages, right? Because you don't know how storages, mechanical spaces, how everything's gonna lay out and how it's gonna work. Dixie is 10,800 feet more. So you're not just the 4 classrooms more than where you were programmed before. When she actually assessed your needs, when meeting with the team over at Dixie and looked at, I think, some administration spaces, different things that may or may not have been accounted for before, you are actually 10,000 feet more, 10,009 feet more.
Yeah. And some of that can be traced back to the change in the number of science labs. Those are bigger than regular classrooms. We went from 1 science lab to 3 science labs.
Yes.
The total number of classrooms stayed the same, but 3 were labs, which made 2 of them get bigger
Yes.
than regular classrooms. Administrative spaces have increased over time and talking with both principals in terms of their ability to supervise students on multiple floors and who's being displaced by the sort of rearranging of both campuses. And so there's definitely been some bigger in both places. I think we've worked really hard to make it as efficient as possible, as comparable from school to school as possible in terms of the size of spaces that we're providing in both places.
So the 5 million is just at this one campus?
No.
That's everything?
It's
Okay.
across everything. The site work at both sites, both high schools, is gonna be a little bit more. But we're still trying to figure that out. And so please don't also be married to that $5 million number. We're just trying to make it as little as possible.
You should have never said that.
I know, you're nailed to it now.
Listen, Jeannie, how long you been working? Remind them, Jeannie, how long you been working with
Hey,
me?
we'll go back to the
First
trial
time
that's
standing
going on.
right
We'll
for
strike that comment from the record.
This is just a workshop, so it's
Yeah.
not a concrete number.
Well, I'm just trying to give you an order of magnitude of what it may or may not be.
No.
It helps so much when we can go to the local market and get input on equipment and systems, and then start working with the engineers and the architects to get this down as much as possible. But in terms of where we are, I mean, in terms of what the 4 classrooms and what all of the overall meetings, you're about a little over 10,000 feet more than where you were before, and Abbeville's about 5,000 feet more. And to take it a step further, she's looked at it in terms of parity between the schools, and we do think it's more even in terms of square foot per student, because I know that was a question at one point as well. Let's just pretend like I never said the number. But what we
It's
want
kind of
to
like
do.
the 400 square foot classrooms, that's all
I
the
just-
record.
Yeah.
It helps that it's not at just Dixie. It sounded like 4 classrooms were costing us $6 more million.
No,
it's
I
across the board.
think, no, and I should have said the site work, and I've mentioned it before in individual conversations. The site work is a big driver here as well, on both sites, particularly at Dixie, but this new plan helps significantly.
It's obviously, I think it saves money.
Yeah.
I think you may have been at your 5 million either way, but
Well, we were never gonna do all this parking
Um,
originally and booths
well,
and stuff. When we were
it
way
just-
back
it just
in-
opens up
in
space.
concept land.
so, Mr. Chairman, so I'm gonna get back to what do y'all need? I mean, are y'all sticking around for the regular meeting or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they'll be-
So are they needing,
So we get to continue.
I'll just say from my standpoint, I'm good to move.
I would love to hear that the board wants us to move forward with this design. That's what,
Well, I have just one quick question. So the next step, let's say tonight we say, okay, everybody's like, yep, move forward with this. The next step, once you do that, you guys are all gonna come back to us and say, okay, this is the final plan for Abbeville. We're gonna say, yep, we're good. This is the final plan for Dixie. Yep, we're good. This is the final plan. So we get the opportunity to talk about that again. Now, we're not gonna let you come in here, we're not gonna come in here and say, wait a minute, we're gonna add 4 more classes.
We may.
Well, right, and that's why we wanted this just a general direction, because I don't want
Right.
to reprice this again and give you confidence
I
in
know.
what you need, how much more money you need.
Right.
If we are gonna adjust the overall program
Right,
that's
yeah.
significantly cost impacted.
Well,
But I don't want this to be the final time we get to discuss.
Oh,
it.
no, no, and we've got work to do, similar to work that we did this morning with the teachers at Abbeville and the teachers at the Career Center. We've got that same work to do at Dixie in terms of understanding how they're gonna use science labs and those kinds of spaces to add layers to the information that we presented today.
This is just for the shell of the structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Number of classrooms, shell, overall strategy, 3 stories, site plan with an overall strategy, knowing we've still got some finessing to do on the driveway.
I have one more. I think I know the answer to, but I just want to hear it. At Dixie, that parking lot right there, the kids are gonna have to be accessing the end of the old existing building now.
Yes.
You have to have that parking lot there because of the cafeteria behind and no.
Between the 2 buildings?
Right.
So that parking, I think, is primarily to serve visitors that might come to the.
Right, but it has to be there and not in the front because you can't move the building back.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that we can get more spaces if we put it there than we can. The only way to put spaces in front of the new high school building would be to parallel park them. And we're gonna only
Yeah.
end up with 4 or 5 spaces right there, but when it's all said and done. And I think that that's the right spot for visitor parking, so you don't have visitors driving all back in your site during the
I just
drive-through
don't,
day.
I don't think it's ideal to have the kids walking through the
Well,
parking
but
lot.
there will be sidewalk routes
Gotcha.
where they don't have
So
to
they don't have to
cut
go through
across
that?
the parking lot to be able to get from one side to the other.
Okay.
So there will be sidewalks around there.
Any other questions, comments? Because we have about 5 minutes before the regular meeting starts. If everybody would like to take a little quick break, and then we'll meet back in here at 6. So we got 5 minutes. Okay? Thank everybody thank y'all for coming and hang around. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our regular scheduled Abbeville County School Board meeting tonight. Thank you everyone for coming out. We just finished with our construction project workshop, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But I'd like for everyone to stand for a moment of silence real quick, please. Cheers. Thank you. Please remain standing. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gary for just a second.
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Ed Patton with our local Boy Scout troop with us tonight, and he has some, I think, up to 17 young men with us with our Boy Scouts. Mr. Patton, if you want to make any introductions and then present the Pledge of Allegiance to it. There you go, right there. Okay. Come on in, Mr. Patton.
We thank you. This is Troop 62 Boy Scouts of America. We've been in business since 1982. We've had 70 Eagle Scouts. Going to summer camp for the 38th or 39th time in July, and Mr. William Arnold will be presenting the
I'm going to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you would come forward.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we get all the Boy Scouts.
All of you come up, please.
Leaders too.
Yeah.
Leaders, y'all come up.
Leaders? Y'all come back.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Thank y'all so very much. Thank you. Y'all may be seated. Thank you again, Boy Scouts. What troop was it, 66?
62.
62. Thank y'all again for that. We appreciate that. And thank you for their leaders for doing that with those young men in our community. Thank y'all. I'm assured that all board members got the agenda. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as it's printed.
Second.
I would like to make an amendment to the agenda for discussion action items J4, JCCE zoning. That will be considered first reading since this is an actual policy change.
I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can change it at the meeting.
I called Ashley, she said you could because it's a policy change and it wasn't written that way. We could change it as an amendment to make it a first reading, and then next month will be a second reading. That way we'd have any public input next month for our meeting if any questions come up.
All right, if that's what legal counsel told you, I'm gonna go with that, but I think, okay.
So I need a motion and a second to amend the agenda.
Make a motion that we amend the agenda.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second for amending the agenda to J4, JCCE zoning be first reading only for this meeting. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Sorry, discussion, you have a question?
Yeah, can we make changes in the agenda the way, because the purpose of the agenda was to make sure that everyone knew what we were going to do.
That's exactly right, Mr. Tisdale.
Yeah.
And
That's-
if we
that's-
make changes in it, then the public,
Well, we're not making a change to agenda other than we're saying that this reading of the John C. Calhoun Elementary School zoning will be considered a first reading instead of just approval of the zoning. Because this is an actual, since our policy, we have our policies, our zoning policies are a policy by the board. And also we have a policy that says any policy change from the board has to be done as a first reading and a second reading. That's why I'm changing, amending this to say that the discussion action item number 4 is a first reading only. We'll have to have a second reading on this because this is a policy change. I'm not changing what's being presented or what's being done. I'm just changing that this is only going to be a first reading of the zoning change that is being presented by the administration.
My only question is that it says, above it says discussion information. It doesn't say,
Well, down at J, it's a discussion action item. That's what I'm changing, the discussion action item.
You go ahead and then I'll go.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I agree what you're trying to accomplish. I do see that. I'm just wondering, would it be better not be fit to, since the agenda's already printed like that, to just go ahead and discuss that action item on where it is? Because I think the name of it even could be changed. I mean, because that zoning's not only affecting just John C., it's affecting Cherokee Trail, Diamond Hill, Long Cane. I mean, I'm just asking, could we just address all that under that item?
We could remove the action item and just have the discussion and.
Well, I
And
guess
not
what I'm
vote
trying
on it.
to say is, since it's under as far as an action item, just go ahead and have the action item, have the motion, I'm not telling you what to do, but then under discussion of that item, make some suggestions and changes and whatever, and then vote up or down on that, amend that, whatever you want to do, and then next meeting, put it up for first reading of a policy change, of a zoning policy, because I believe if we look in our policy manual, I think there is a policy.
Yeah, we have a policy that says any policy change.
I'm just speaking, I get it, and I think it's easy what you might be trying to do, but for less complication, maybe let's just, handle it like that. Is that satisfactory?
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Mr. Tisdale is 100% correct with the Freedom of Information Act. You cannot change an action item within 24 hours of the meeting without declaring it an emergency and 2/3 vote, all right? You're wanting to change the wording, that changes the action item. You just can't do that unless it's an emergency. This is not an emergency, right? So to get back to what Mr. Evans is saying, completely understand what you're trying to do. Yes, this has to be a policy change. You have to have first reading and second reading. You just can't change it and do that tonight. You can vote on this if you want to. That's perfectly fine. To say, yes, we plan to do this. And next month you have to have first reading for the policy change, and then the next month you have to have second reading. You just can't change that action item to say.
Okay, I'll withdraw the, amendment.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I was trying to make it as simple as possible, and I checked with legal, and they said as long as it's not changing the vote, which it wasn't changing the vote, it's just, I would want it to be worded as first reading, because this would be the first reading of it, but I'll withdraw my amendment, and we'll just leave the agenda as written.
Because I think we can agree that maybe the title of it needs to be changed as well, as far as that.
It should just be a Iowa County zoning policy. Okay, all right. So I'll withdraw my amendment. So now we have a motion and a second for the agenda as written. All those, any other discussion on the agenda? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, agenda passes. Consent action items is approval of the minutes for January 24th, 2023, regular board meeting. Oh, no public input. We were told. Sorry, missed that. So approval of the minutes for January 24th, 2023.
I'll move. Do we approve?
I have a motion, need a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your right hand. All right, Dr. Gary Goldstar Howard.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Dr. Britton, if you'll join me at the front, please. We have a good number of Gold Star highlights recognizing many of our students and their accomplishments. I'll let her begin. Students, when your name's called, if you'll come to the front, please. Mr. Rhodes, you can join us up here as well.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to recognize several of our students at both high schools. In August of 2022, the College Board has awarded 62,000 students from across the country with academic honors from the College Board National Recognition Programs for excelling in their classroom and on College Board assessments. The following students excelled in college board assessments and schoolwork to earn these awards, which colleges use to identify academically competitive, underrepresented students. And because we are in a rural school district, this is why our students are chosen. First, we have, if the student is not here, the principal can come forward. We have Savannah Seelig from Dixie High School. We have Palmer Patrick from Dixie High School. And just as a caveat, we have soccer, spring sports, baseball, softball, track, and everything else. So we're glad our students are academically gifted as well as athletically gifted. Emily Mann for Dixie High School. We get a round of applause for those students. From Abbeville High School, we have Bethany Hughes. James Lancaster from Abbeville High School. Jonah Cooley, Abbeville High School. Kyla Brown, Abbeville High School. And Kiara Smith, Abbeville High School.
Mr. White, would you join your students up there too, please? We'll get one good picture, then you can join. All right, now go on. Make sure Mama's been on those pictures.
These y'all won't get hot.
Get Scott, maybe. Mr. Green, get Mr. White. Great job, students.
Next, we have Abbeville High School's Future Business Leaders of America with us tonight. Their chapter, sponsored by faculty sponsor Ms. Crystal Banks, they have been awarded the Silver Champion Chapter Award. They are on track to receive the Gold Champion Chapter Award, which is the highest recognition awarded by the National FBLA Association. Again, they have a presentation they would like to share with us. And first, we're going to have the sponsor to come forward to receive their certificate. Students, if you can take a picture with your sponsor, please, and then you can do your presentation. So now they have a presentation for the audience.
FBLA is the largest business, career, and technical student organization in the world. FBLA helps members prepare for a career in business and business-related fields through academic competitions, leadership development, and educational programs. It helps students develop a skill set and knowledge in their chosen career. Our chapter has 19 members.
Hi guys, I'm Lucy Coleman. I am a community service leader. I organize one spring and one fall community service projects to help out around here. The first one that we've already done so far is Angel Tree. So Angel Tree is where people will come together and they give gifts during Christmas time to give the kids that are less fortunate than others. And then the next one that we did was canned food drive. So we collect cans throughout our high school, and then we give them to our community to give back.
Hi, my name is Lois Crawford. I'm the fundraising officer. My job entails raising money to help fund our athletic activities such as the district conference, leadership conference, and the association conference and that. I also help create programs that benefit not only ourselves but our community also. And I work with our business banks to help develop beneficial fundraisers for us.
Hi, my name is Zaya Watt. This is Emma Horn, and we run the social media accounts for our chapter. So we have an Instagram account, Facebook account, and a TikTok account. And we basically run and maintain our social media accounts, develop and post content platforms, and we post news and events for our community that we keep for our chapter.
So I'm taking, Gage Evans asked me to present his slide. He's currently at a golf match, hopefully win. I'll text him after this and say, you better win. Something to do with this. But anyway, our treasurer, Gage Evans, works with the advisor in depositing the funds, keeps accurate and up-to-date financial records, and provides detailed reports to the secretary for reporting purposes, which is Bethany.
Hey, I'm Bethany Hughes, like you said, I'm the secretary. I take detailed notes to keep track of all the decisions made during each meeting. And then I create a report of the minutes to be read at the next meeting, just so if any of the members weren't there, they know what's happening. And then I type out many of the reports that are sent in to earn our champion chapter points.
Hello everyone, my name is Carl Patel and I'm the vice president. And my basic job is assisting the president. I assist other members in fulfilling their duties and making confident and important decisions, sometimes in a group of presidents, and of course, leading meetings during issues that are passed. I'm Riley Jones and I'm our president. And my job as president is to lead our club meetings and officer meetings. I do a lot of communicating with our advisor, Ms. Banks. I help her plan upcoming meetings, and I notify and remind members of upcoming events. Another thing I help is obtaining champion chapter points. Our goal this year is to a gold chapter, and that's the highest level of chapters, which is bronze, silver, and gold. And after that, we will be a gold chapter.
Right.
And I help our advisor make crucial decisions for our chapter.
Hello everyone, my name is Emma Horn and I'm the District 1 Vice President. I'm a state officer. So I'm going to give you a little information about the SCFBLA state and our conferences, and then go on to my duties as a state officer. So we'll break it down. With the state of South Carolina, we have 4 districts. The president presides over all 4 districts, and then the 4 vice presidents are over District 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm over District 1. We also have 1 parliamentarian and 1 secretary. Throughout our FBLA year, we are preparing to get ready for our district, state, and national conferences. DLC, our District Leadership Conference, as you have heard, is the district competition where members compete to qualify for the state level. This is where local chapters come in each district and compete against each other to hopefully qualify to continue on through their event to the state level. The SLC, or State Leadership Conference, is the state competition where members compete to qualify for the national level. This is where all the members of all the chapters come together, usually in Columbia, to participate in the state competition to hopefully advance to the national level. Now, the national level is held at a different place each year around the U.S. All 50 states and territories do come to this national conference. From this national conference, after you compete, members will compete to win prize money and recognition for the event they competed in and the work that they've done throughout the year. But going back to the state of South Carolina, to begin our year, we have a state fall leadership rally. This is where all the chapters in the state can come together to get introduced to the official state officers, communicate, network with everyone, and get some great information from different workshops that they can choose to go to. State officers are elected in March by their fellow peers at the State Leadership Conference. The year begins once all the chapters come back, get ready for school, and we have the State Fall Leadership Rally. Most of the time, it's mostly us just getting to know all of the chapters and members around the state of South Carolina, and then it is our obligation to provide a workshop. This past last year, I did a workshop on social media marketing where I provided my peers with a workshop showing how social media can be a positive thing to help promote not only yourself, but businesses and companies, and you can really get a good understanding on what it's supposed to do. So now on to my duties as District 1 Vice President. So after I was elected in March by my fellow peers, I had then needed to go to officer training, which is usually held in June. This is a day-long class where you sit in on different classes and learn leadership, communication skills, and all around how to become the best state officer you could be, especially for your specified district. In order to even qualify to be a state officer, you have to complete numerous qualifications. One of those being completing the BAA. Now y'all might ask, what in the world is a BAA? Well, it is a Business Achievement Award. There's 4 levels to BAA, 3 of which I have completed. These help promote life skills and really help you learn what you will need to use for the future. Then, like I had mentioned, I presented a workshop at the Fall Leadership Rally about social media marketing. My main role is to communicate with advisors in District 1 and help them in any way possible. Help the advisors, the members, the chapters with anything they may need pertaining to FBLA. Whether that be registering for the DLC, SLC, or NLC, I'm there to help them in any way I can. And our main objective as a state officer is to help create future business leaders of America. And while that may sound a little corny, because that is our FBLA, it is our main goal to help strive to create strong business leaders that can advocate for themselves and other people around them. A little bit more about me. I have also numerous social media marketing jobs that are on top of my District 1 Vice President. Them being, like you heard, I'm a fellow social media officer for my chapter with Zaya. I run the SC FBLA official Instagram and Facebook accounts. I also run my own SC FBLA account for my officer position. And then I also, after doing all of this, has landed me a marketing job for a local real estate company to market for their business. After all of this, we have state coming up in 2 weeks, the March 13th and 14th. And I'm gladly to say that I'll be running for state president this year. So, hopefully for life. On behalf of our chapter, we would like to thank the board members and Mr. White for allowing us to come here today. And a huge thank you to Ms. Banks and Ms. Adams for their leadership, their great advice, and taking the time to help grow this chapter. If you have any questions for me or any of my fellow officers, we'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this time. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of the officer team?
They can take over for a while.
Yeah.
We're gonna say hello.
No, they're all scooted out.
No, no, no. Hey, look.
Yeah, let it take.
Hold on, Ms. Banks, tell them off a second.
Yeah.
All right, at this time, we normally do a comment section from the board. I'll start with Mr. Evans on the end over there.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, good job to all the ones that are awarded. I would like, first of all, I'd like to thank the Boy Scout Troop 62 for being here and saluting, doing the Pledge of Allegiance. That's awesome, and I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you to the FBLA. Great job. I appreciate Emma covering for Gage. Appreciate that.
As always.
Exactly. Yeah. He gets way involved. But thank you. Y'all did an excellent job. That was a great presentation, and look forward to hearing more good things to you, and good luck in your future elections. And then to all the other award winners, great job.
Yeah. Obviously, to follow that up, Boy Scouts that love everything that y'all do and everything that you stand for, and really appreciate y'all leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our award winners represent Abbeville County, and being one of the top districts in the state, we know why. It's because of our students at FBLA. You just did a great presentation, seeing our own students here projecting and speaking with confidence. I mean, it's just awesome to see. So really proud of all of y'all.
I'll say the same. Congratulations to this team. That was wonderful. Public speaking is one of the hardest things to do, as you can tell by listening to me speak. You continue that. It'll carry you far in life. And that was awesome. Great plan, and I love the presentation. I'm sorry that the gentleman wasn't able to be here to be a part of that. I don't know who that was, but Boy Scout. Yeah, the Boy Scout. Well, you got them for the Boy Scout team. Thank you for leading us in the pledge, and to everyone else, and Mr. White, again, for your support of these team members here.
I'd like to thank the Boy Scouts for taking the time to come in and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I also want to congratulate the award winners and also the FBLA for an awesome job that you're doing.
Thank you, Boy Scouts. Like everybody else said, great organization. I appreciate you taking the time to come be with us tonight. To the academic folks who were recognized, congratulations. We appreciate your hard work, and to you guys, thank you for your presentation and your hard work.
It's an outstanding job to each and every one of you, and keep up the great work, and looking in the future to see you guys be great entrepreneurs.
Being at the end, everything's already been said. But I'll add to everything that they said. I agree with 100%. You guys are wonderful. I love to see young ladies come in dressed very professionally and conservatively, modestly. You represent Abbeville very well just by doing that. And you came in with such an air of confidence, and you just sound like you know what you're talking about. I'd listen to you. I'd follow you. You can lead me. Like I'm convinced. And I know also, thank you to the sponsors, the troop leader and your sponsors and the parents, because I know that that's a lot of unrecognized work that you do, and to guide them to do what they're doing. So they have good role models, obviously. So congratulations and thank you.
I really don't like going last, but I have to. But thank you again to our Boy Scout troop for coming out and leading us in the pledge. We really appreciated that, and that was great. To our award winners, I think they all slipped out, but I congratulate each one of you and the teachers that are helping them. FBLA, that's a great organization, great work. Y'all are doing a wonderful job, and again, I'll say what Ms. Lisa said, coming in here dressed like you're going to a business meeting. If y'all would like to take over for us, we'll all go finish out the rest of the business meeting for us today. But congratulations, and to your sponsors and the principals and everyone involved, parents and everyone. Congratulations on that, and Emma, good luck in your future election. Thank y'all again. Okay, we are fixing to go into executive session. I'll need a motion and a second for that, please.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion and a second? A second. All those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your hand.
You have to state specifically what you're going into executive session
Sorry.
for.
Let me put my eyes back on. Personnel recommendations and resignations, retirements, and hires. Okay. That's be the motion for that and the second. All those in favor of going into executive session, raise your right hand. All right, we'll meet in here. I ask everyone to please.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second motion.
Have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. Any discussion? All those in favor of coming out of the executive session back into open session, raise your right hand. We are now back in open session, and we are down to I, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, we will begin with our update from Thompson Turner Construction and LS3P. So Emily, come on up, don't sit down. Did Jenny leave you?
No, they're coming, we'll wait. We'll give them just a second when we're down the hall a little ways.
Ms. Kirk, you're up.
Wait.
We're waiting on you.
Boy Scout from the state.
Oh.
Because I told them they do that.
They gotta stay for a whole meeting.
Oh, bless their hearts. I should have done it before I got on board. Make it slower.
All right, Ms. Kite, you ready? We'll
Good
turn the floor over to
evening.
you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us back again this month. We were here talking with all of you in January about the Abbeville and the Career Center and the Dixie High School construction projects. We're here tonight to present just a little bit of an update. We had a pretty productive work session with the board prior to this meeting, and so we're going to keep our conversation a little bit brief, I think. At this point, the primary focus of our work in the last month has really been on Dixie High School. We had some challenges with the site that we were working through, if you might recall, in our last presentation a month ago, and we've come to make some pretty big design changes for that project in an effort to improve the outcomes out there with regards to how the site works and the drop-off and the pickup lanes and all of that stuff. So the primary focus of our conversation with the board today was centered around the Dixie High School project. The other two projects are moving forward. We've gotten the next phase of our design work completed on the other two schools, and those projects are largely moving forward in the direction that we presented at the last meeting. So tonight's will be very high-level overview of some pretty big changes at Dixie that we think are making some really good strides towards a better project and a better outcome on that campus. So we can look at a couple of slides here. The big change is that we're proposing a 3-story building on Dixie's campus, which there's some faces. It allows us to really consolidate our building footprint. And we can, let's see. Yeah. But having a 3-story building helps us consolidate our building footprint, gives us a little bit more site to work with. We've got maybe a couple slides back. You can see this slide. That has 3 floors stacked on top of each other. The upper 2 floors, which are the 2 plans at the top with the green and the red boxes, are classroom floors. That's the 2nd and the 3rd floor. Underneath that, on the 1st floor, are administrative offices and the cafeteria and the kitchen for the project. The primary driver for this decision is to allow us to get more space on the site that's not taken up by new construction of buildings to account for the parking needs and the drop-off drives that we need to have on this particular campus. And so we've tightened up the building footprint into a 3-story building. It also improves the phasing and the sequencing of construction on the campus. We can build this building first without disrupting the normal operations of school, and to reduce the number of phases that we were going to have to do our construction in on this particular campus. If you look at the next slide, you can see that green box down in the bottom left corner of the drawing. That's the existing parking lot at the front of your campus, which is where the new building would go. And so we would build in that portion of the building, or of the site, and then you can see parking above that. That's where the 2 existing classroom wings are that would be demolished. And that makes room for a pretty consolidated, good amount of parking on the campus, which we are certainly in need of out there with the drives. The only other slide that we've got is a little bit of a zoom out of the site so that you can start to see how the driveways and such work. The pink line is a car drop-off loop. We had some good conversations with the board in the work session today. That's a little bit still in working through design. We've got a couple of different options. There's some trade-offs to each of those. We're working with DOT to resolve those issues and to settle on a final layout for the parking lot. For the driveways for the car drop-off and stacking needs that we have. And you can see there's the gray box up there with a good amount of parking, and the new building is proposed in that front parking lot. So that's kind of the high level, pretty big changes from the last time that you've seen it. And so we are getting this project on schedule, back on track with the schedule for the other two schools that are continuing to move forward. And I don't think we anticipate, we were just talking about schedule while we were waiting for this meeting to start back up again. And I think we largely feel like there's going to be some minimal impacts to schedule with regards to getting started out here on campus, as long as the board's comfortable with the direction we're proposing. And we continue to move forward after this meeting. So that's all I got. If there's any other questions from the board or anyone else. And I'm good if you guys have
Jenny, do you have anything to add?
Would you like me to?
If you have something.
All right, good evening. I'm Jenny Kirk. I'm with Thompson Turner. We'll be the builders for the project. We've been working closely with LS3P and of course the board and Dr. Gary throughout this whole process. I thought maybe I would just high level speak to the process and schedule. I know schedule is one thing that has been asked about a lot and we haven't really answered because we just didn't have the answers. We had a really good meeting just now while you all were in executive session, and I think we wrapped our brain around it a bit. So the goal, because this team, I have to tell you, and I'm not just saying this to say it, it is incredible what they're doing with this design and how quickly they're moving. They are aiming, they have their design development sets complete, which is basically a 50% complete set for the Cade Center and for Abbeville High School. And they will be looking to finish their construction documents in the next 30 to 45 days, which means we can competitively bid both of those projects at that time. That being said, with Dixie, we're looking to only track a little bit behind that. So our goal is to be able to start the Cade Center potentially first in the late spring, maybe even by May. I know we had talked earlier about perhaps having 3 separate groundbreaking ceremonies to really celebrate each of the 3 projects starting. Then we would, as soon as Abbeville gets out for the summer, start immediately because the goal would be, and everybody's going to be excited to hear this, our goal is to have your 2 academic and admin wings for both schools, including Dixie, because of the efficiency of the building size and shape, ready in August of 24. So that summer is what would be our goal to start moving in technology and furniture. Now, don't shoot me if it doesn't happen, but that is what we are aiming at. That's what we're going for.
Say that? Should we really say that?
I would not say it if I didn't believe it.
She had warning
and
earlier.
he would be
I
the one
know.
shooting me
She
if
must
he
be-
didn't say it.
Didn't you get a warning earlier about word, like numbers and?
This one I feel better about, or I wouldn't be saying it in
Yeah,
public
yeah.
session.
Yeah, we heard
So
that about that.
our goal is to come back to you
Yeah.
to really give you more confidence in how much this is going to cost. In hopefully the April meeting, if we have better ideas in the March meeting, we will. And then also in March, of course, give you a design update on what these buildings look like. So that's where we are. I hope that makes you feel good. I feel really good about it. I was getting nervous about the schedule. But the goal is to really be able to utilize next summer to demolish your existing wings that have to come down, because we really want to do that while the students are not on campus. And so we have to get those buildings up as fast as possible so that we can take down the other ones. It's very, very tight window that he's responsible for now.
Very tight.
All right, if anybody has any questions, feel free, or Bradley, you have anything to add?
No, I think, just the process of getting those buildings down, once that admin building's up, and also getting those parking lots in as quickly as possible is very crucial to the Dixie schedule. And we're gonna be looking at ways to try to streamline that the best we can, with Emily's help, through the design changes or through the actual, how the building is designed is what we're looking at now.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because even though we will have, the goal is to have your students in those 2 buildings, we will of course still be on Abbeville's campus building your new cafeteria and kitchen, because the new Abbeville kitchen and cafeteria go where the old buildings were. We will still be on Dixie's campus for a bit longer, finishing up site work, finishing up some parking. If we want to help Dr. Gary and his team with anything in that existing cafeteria, the bathrooms, whatever, we'll be there for that. So we won't be gone, but we'll have the bulk of it, the work done we have, which is really efficient.
Absolutely.
Someone's looking out for us, that work out. All right.
No, I was just gonna say, what do y'all need from us right now?
I think the biggest thing for us is some consensus from the board that the direction that we're taking the Dixie project is the direction that you'd like us to go. The map will allow us to keep drawing and to get that one up to the level of detail of where we've gotten the other two schools in the last month. So that would be sort of the biggest thing that we need for this feedback from y'all on that.
I think it's a good.
Think it's good.
Should go for
Get
me.
it done.
Get it
Looks
done.
like a go.
Get it done.
Everybody's shaking their head like this.
Yeah, we didn't have an action item.
It's not an action item, it's just
Yeah,
tell y'all to move
but
forward.
That's a consensus.
nobody's jumping up and down
Yeah.
saying no. So.
We'll wait till the money lady comes back.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's your alter,
Thank
that's
you.
your
Thank
alter
y'all so
ego.
much.
That's the alter ego.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank y'all so much, appreciate it.
All right, next item, Mr. Chairs, board members, the CIP, and just to give you a little update on it. The playground equipment has been moved to March by the installers, and we were hoping to have that done at our elementary schools this month. Did not happen. I guess supply chain is still the buzzword, so we're waiting on that in March. ABM should also be complete in March. We have a punch list that Mr. Reap and I meet with just about daily to start checking off the ABM project and the items that need to be cleared up for them. The Cherokee Trail Elementary School plumbing project is complete, and plumber will now be moving to Long Cane Primary to get it in good shape. So we're hoping that's 1 out of 3 down of a main plumbing project to keep us out of the great flood again. And then also at Diamond Hill Elementary, we have done some new flooring to the front entrance, and some more of your entrances will be getting a little upfit as well. But so any questions from me regarding CIP and information needed?
What were you saying about entrances being upfitted?
The flooring at Diamond Hill was in rough shape.
Okay.
Partly due to the flood, I think, and just partly the wear and tear. So we've only done the front entrance, but we'll get to the other entrances as well in time.
Yes, sir. On the completed projects, the district office project here, the first floor carpeting and stuff, can you give us kind of an itemized breakdown of how that amount of money laid out? You don't have to do, I'm saying, can you provide that to us, not this minute? Yeah.
Mr. Reed, if you will, get with me on those invoices, and we'll send that out.
Thank you.
I have one more question on the CIP. Dr. Gary, under Wright Middle School, and I'm just simply, I'm not trying to pick on Wright Middle at all, Mr. Burdett. I was just noticing, I know it's on the CIP, could we kind of think about looking at adding to the CIP? I was, they had doors decorated for Black History Month, and I went through there today and I noticed some tiles and the floors are looking bad.
Right. We walked today as well, and what happened because of ABM, we couldn't wax this summer, so that's why they look bad. That will be remedied this summer. So yes, it's on our radar.
Cracks and all, yeah.
Yes.
Anything else on CIP? Okay.
All right, here none, we'll move on to item C, maintenance update, Mr. Reed.
Question about maintenance, had 244 workers completed one board meeting. That's real major, did some repairs to sprinklers on the football fields and stuff. Got rid of an old building in the Westwood, old storage building that was falling in, we took care of it in-house.
I don't see any quick.
It's a great job.
Day-to-day stuff.
Day-to-day stuff.
Mr. Reed, thank you and your staff
Great
for your
job.
hard work. Let's move to financial report now. Item D, Mr. Ken.
Board, you have your capital improvement funds, your EST funds, and also your revenue and expenditure report. I'll take any questions you might have.
Mr. Ken, could you just enlighten me a little bit on the revenue and expenditure statement? There's a lot of negatives at the end of that budget. It's been, more than usual, I think, isn't it? All right, how are we looking on the 23-24 budget next year?
So for 20 to answer the first question.
Yep.
The negative, this budget.
Yep.
That's all for the county when they give us the money.
Yep.
And that's how we do the revenue. And when we're paid by the state.
Yep.
Those will be taken care of, hopefully by March.
Perfect, thank you. And,
Now for the 23-24 budget.
right,
Right? We still are we got a conference that actually is coming up next week, so hopefully we'll find out more about how much the state is actually gonna give us, what they're gonna like, the calculation they're gonna use to give us funding right for the 23-24 school year.
so have you heard anything, or is there anything coming down as about where they might be? And I know, are you getting requests from different schools? All I'm thinking about is, as we move forward into our projects, it's probably a good time to have Mr. Chairman, maybe a budget workshop at some point.
Okay, so that was my next thing. So I would like to wait till after this meeting in March, the conference in March that we're having, so I can get a little bit more information on exactly how the state is gonna fund us this year. Again, what kind of formula they're using, calculation they're gonna use. And I was thinking maybe in April, middle of April.
Right.
Have a budget workshop.
Right now would be premature, we just don't have the
Yeah, we
information.
just
to give.
don't have the information.
Now, have we met with principals? Yes. So that process has happened, and we're just waiting on further instruction from the state.
And we just have to have a first and second reading on the budget.
Right. I would imagine that would be May and June.
It'd be May and June, just like, that's what it was last year.
Well, I know the House and Means, in the 2 meetings I was at last week and this week, already bounced around ideas about what they want to do, so they haven't come to consensus yet to tell them, so I do know that, I heard that yesterday.
I'm just simply asking for the future, if we know that we may have to have some more money for our wonderful new projects, it'd be nice to know where we are for the budget, or where we might be.
For the
Correct.
And I would like that too.
I know you got that magic globe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Question.
Any other questions?
Yeah. On the ESSER funds, ESSER 2 funds, deadline's 9/30/23. That's the deadline for when these funds have to be expended, correct? On ESSER 3 funds, the deadline's 9/30/24, correct? Do both of these funds have, because you may read, say, one line item that says learning loss, or the other that says improve air quality, or professional development, unique needs. I'm just reading some of them. But do personnel fit within both ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds, or is it just ESSER 2 or just ESSER 3? In terms of the personnel that we've hired with these funds.
There are personnel that fit in ESSER. There were personnel that fit in ESSER 2.
Okay.
They are now in ESSER 3.
Okay. Okay.
And they are in, like I said, if you got these different categories like learning loss or educational technology, you ain't got nothing to do with that. But learning loss and other activities is where your personnel would fit.
Learning loss and other activities. Okay.
With the majority of learning loss being supplies, tech stuff.
But parts of positions can be paid for with
That's correct.
this money, like
That's correct.
0.1 of a position,
Like a half.
to a half or whatever.
That's
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear. We're approaching the deadline and all this budget stuff's coming up. Just want to make sure I have some clarity on that.
And these people will remain in ESSER until 2024 to
Right.
make sure that all that the monies are exhausted.
Yeah.
The learning loss monies that you're dealing with, the learning loss monies are mainly for individuals or for materials or supplies?
Both, yeah, both.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gann. All right, we'll move to technology now. Mr. Kinsey?
This includes the support executive for the summer. I don't have anything to add. That's exactly
When are we do like an upgrade or replacement? Do you know?
Or,
Any of the Chromebooks or anything?
oh, I have a complete refresh cycle. I mean, I don't know how, we can't get into the weeds on it today, but it,
It's ongoing.
That's ongoing.
it's ongoing, right? And it's kind of the one-to-one program is kind of self-sustaining because of the technology fix, like I mentioned there.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for technology? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Kimsey. All right, we'll move to curriculum now. Ms. Ashley, Ms. Crocker.
Good evening. We tried to give you guys some updates and about some of the things going on instructionally. We tried to include a little bit of technology with some map data. Keeping in mind that map, knowing that we have some new board members in kindergarten through 8th grade are required to take it 3 times a year. So we just completed the winter map in January and or in December, and so that's some of the data for it. The two big key points that I wanted to just mention, big concerns. One was looking at if our students grew from the fall to the winter.
Point it back there again.
You might need to.
There you
There we go. So if you look at this data, it's the map where they were in the fall to where our students district-wide were in the winter. Of course, what we want to see here is the lines going up in growth to show growth. So that was the biggest point in showing that data, was so that we can see that our students are showing growth from the fall to the winter. As you can tell, our younger grades, kindergarten, first, second, third, the lines are a lot more steeper, so they're showing more significant growth than some of our upper grades, which is definitely an area we've been having conversations about. And then, there, sorry about it. Then this is for the ELA, once again showing the different grade levels from where they were in the fall to the winter. Hoping to see yet again that slant in the line, those trend lines in growth. Looking, of course, in your kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade, there's a little bit more growth there than as we get up into your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grades, which is very typical of what research is showing. Our students that we're finding nationwide being impacted more by COVID are your upper grade students, those higher grades, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And then the other piece of information to show you is just kind of how we were prior to COVID. The goal in looking at this data was mainly to see, are we making our gains from where we were? The blue line was that winter right before we got out for COVID, and the green line is where we are now in each grade level. So the red line, of course, we did test during that year that we were out, but keeping in mind some students were, we tried to test every student, but the requirement of the number of students tested was not, the state kind of waived that a little bit that year. So that red line might be a little off some. So I really paid close attention to the yellow line, which was where we were this time last year compared to where we are this time this year. So yellow last year winter to green this time winter for each grade level. Of course, we want to see those lines going up. And as you can tell in our younger grades, for the majority, for math, we have recovered from COVID. There's still little pieces there that we've been working with principals, and we will continue to work on to target those areas.
And that's normal for 8th grade, right? I'm just looking at the graph.
8th grade, those middle school grades do kind of drop, but the research is really proven across nation, anything that our middle school grades are the ones that have been greatly impacted by COVID. Mainly because when you think about where they were in the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, they were still learning some of those basic skills that were needed to build upon, thinking about math builds. So those basic skills, numeration, numeracy, to help build, we just have to go back and provide a lot of differentiation now to meet their needs. And that's some of the professional development we've been talking about this year in targeting. And then this is the ELA. In blue is
questions?
We also included an update on last week's intercession, just an overview, a broad overview of a little bit of what happened at each school. So that's just a little overview. Some schools offered remediation, some schools offered enrichment. One school offered virtual options that students partook in. But overall, it was a success for those that showed up and a success for those that took a vacation.
I'd just like to say, I'd like to say kudos to Miss Bell. I've heard nothing, but I think I want to take the culinary camp. I've heard great things about that. I don't know what y'all got going on out there, but maybe we need to have lunch or a board meeting there.
Yeah.
I will say that I know sometimes, but I don't know the day, they sell lunch at the Career Center. Maybe that day
But I
can be,
missed that
the next
memo.
one can get a heads up. to all
We
of them.
work so hard, boy.
We'll make sure the board gets.
Yeah, because I'm just right across the street, yeah. That'll be, yeah.
I drive from Greenwood.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Is this pretty much uniform across the district and all the schools? Or
And
is that,
district?
but I mean, is each school is kind of the same, it's all looking the same?
It is, yes, ma'am. It's specifically looking at where our younger grades are showing a lot more gains.
Right.
Than it's been up into before.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a quick question. Seat time recovery, right? So this is, say, where a student misses school and then they can come to the intersection, is that correct?
Yes,
Right.
yes, so if they have already exceeded the number of absences
Mhm.
that they can have and still receive credit for the course,
Mhm.
the state allows districts and schools to work with them to recover that time. So they can come to school, do work, and to recoup hours that they have missed.
So is that a one hour time? If they miss a whole day of school or classes, four
So the high
classes?
school, then it's an hour and a half class that they have an hour.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have one, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Ms. Crocker, Ms. Ashley, could you just briefly update us a little bit? There's been some discussion about the high school league and a new rule. Could you explain to us, is that, Dr. Gary, would that be?
You talking about eligibility?
Eligibility and a dual enrollment, I mean, I know is that fall
Right.
within them?
What I found out today, as we entered August of this year, there was a state law that could be followed or an existing eligibility rule that could be followed. But by second semester, which we're now in, it is 100% state law. So there's a procedure we have to follow. Basically, in a block schedule, you have to pass two courses. And if you pass two, you're eligible. If you pass one, you're not. That's just a nutshell of, but if you want to see the actual state law, I can give it to you.
And that's being relayed to everyone going forward?
Yes, and we've talked to our high school principals, and that's going to be in athletic handbook, regular handbook, and communicated through guidance.
Thank you.
Can you, and this is strictly my curiosity, I don't need it other than I'm curious to read that, but could you send that to us just so I could, yeah, like I say, we as a board don't have any need for it other than my curiosity wanting to read it. Yeah.
I think it's good reading, Mr. Brooks.
Yeah.
5934-160, I believe is the
I'll tell you,
number.
well, if you know that, then I can look it up
But I
myself.
will send it anyway.
59,
34-160, I'm pretty certain is it. Why I know that.
okay.
Scary.
Yeah.
Probably just look at it.
I'm sorry.
Some days I have absolutely nothing else to do than read state law. So
That's most every day.
But I will send that out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Dr. Gary, what's the difference between the old law and the new law? It's amazing.
The old law, you had to go back to the semester before. Like if you played a fall sport, you went to the spring semester of the previous year to obtain eligibility. When you played a spring sport this year, you went to your fall semester, and guys, y'all help me if I'm saying it wrong. And it was the number of courses that you taken was higher in the old law. They've relaxed it, is a simple way to say it from my viewpoint. From 4 courses, it used to be the minimal, now it's basically half the courses you have to be passing. Is that correct? Roughly?
Overall passing average.
And overall passing average.
Overall, it's just based on the previous semester's classes, where it used to be an overall passing average in the previous school year, I believe, whereas now it's just previous semester.
So it's much more relaxed now with the new state law.
Seems like it should be, they should have made it tougher, so the kids could, you know, you need, you know, their playing time, for a lot of these kids, their playing time ends in Abbeville, where they, you know, if they succeeded academic-wise, they could move on further from Abbeville.
Good point.
Point taken.
Any other questions or comments? No? Continue on.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll move on to food services. Ms. Maxwell, thank you have a report.
Good afternoon. In your packets, you have information on 3 of the grants that we have received, and information about our fund balance and schoolwork prices. And also, I would like to congratulate Westwood Elementary for receiving the school garden to grant education grant. I can't wait to see the student staff get started and fun they'll have growing and learning about their garden. Any questions?
I have questions. I was talking to somebody from Greenwood, and all of their school lunches are paid for by CEP. Do we not qualify for that?
We do have 4 schools that are CEP now, and coming up in April, we're going to be reevaluated to see if the whole district is CEP for next school year.
And that's usually a fluid target year to year,
I
correct?
gotcha. Just surprised that Greenwood was.
And remind them how that's based, it's based on the parents filling out the sheets. And that's, we've always emphasized that. That's what it's based on. Correct.
Excuse me.
Any other questions? All right, moving
All
on.
right, now if I could recognize Dr. Hopkins, John C. Calhoun zoning recommendation.
So you've got a cover letter in your packet that explains kind of the process of how this evolved, that a 3-person committee was formed at the November meeting. We met on November 10th, met at a November meeting. The committee was formed earlier in the year, and to look at the geographic boundaries for John C. Calhoun Elementary School. So that committee met, like I said, on November 10th, and at the January board meeting, the board directed us to put together findings from that committee meeting and make a recommendation this evening. They also asked if we would contact parents who would be impacted by this change to find out their views on that. And so you have a description on that cover letter again of the old or the current John C. Calhoun Falls Elementary attendance zone, and then you have the proposed boundaries listed on that cover sheet, and then you have a map that actually shows you the boundary highlighted. That extends the John C. Calhoun Elementary School attendance zone, does make it more comparable geographically to the other zones. And then you also have in your packet a letter that was sent to those families that were impacted, to kind of explain what was going on, what the committees agreed upon as far as grandfathering students in, and things like that. And then finally, at the end, you have a summary of some conversations that I had with parents. So we sent them the letter and asked for feedback and listed Dr. Gary, Dr. Rudin, and myself, our email addresses. So we asked if they had concerns, they could contact us via email or a phone number at the top of the letterhead. And then I followed that up with just trying to be proactive in calling some parents and explaining what was going on, and you have kind of a summary of their feedback. Not by name, but just by parent 1, parent 2, parent 3. We did have one parent that said they were kind of torn because of the class sizes at John C. being much smaller
But the flip side they said was that the sports at Abbeville was so much better and the kids play sports. The remaining parents were happy where they were, and would want to continue at their current school, even if the zone change is made, they would take advantage of that grandfathering rule. And then at the end, you can see, I had a family member come out of the district office, and their issue was, well, if you grandfather the current kids in, I think you need to grandfather the families in, because we could have a 2 or a 3-year-old at home right now, a child at Long Cane or Westwood, and when it gets time for that 2 or 3-year-old to start kindergarten, if they're mandated to go to John C. and their current kid is happy at Long Cane Westwood, then they're gonna be going from one end of the county to the other. And so they brought up that concern.
Any questions or comments on the rezone?
Well, I got a comment. It seems like, looking at all of the parents' responses, nobody was for it, for that.
That's what.
That particular drawing that we have.
The people that I spoke with on the phone, we didn't have anyone contact the district office to speak to myself, Dr. Bruton, or Dr. Gary. We didn't have a single person email us. So the only contact we did have were those phone calls. And 7 of those 12 families I did get to speak to. And those are kind of summaries of what they had to say.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, that they wasn't happy in that district. Watts Road and all those said that they're not happy at all. So we need to come up with a better plan, another plan.
I have a question. Do they understand, because they would still be able to go to like Abbeville High School and they can still participate in the sports. This doesn't mean, do they understand that? Because that sounds like.
It was kind of making them aware of, first off, of why I'm calling. This is probably odd you're getting this call and what I want to talk to you about, but here's kind of how the process played out. Here's how it would impact you. Here's what the committee has recommended if it is accepted and passes, that kids will be grandfathered in. So yes, they were made aware that they would not be forced into a different school if the board adopted what the committee proposed.
But even so, like if they were to go to John C., they can still go to Abbeville High School. That doesn't.
They could, yes, yes.
And it sounds like some of them didn't really understand that.
Right.
They understood it.
They
understood it. They just didn't want to change it.
They
understand it. They understand it pretty well.
They understand it pretty well.
Well, here's what I would like to say, and is it possible for Mr. Kinsey to put a picture of this map up?
You have that, Mr. Kinsey?
In the,
You want the proposed?
Yeah.
Right, the map that shows the proposed new line. Just, yeah. And while he's doing that, I want everybody to understand what the purpose of this is, right? This is not forcing anybody to move where their children are going to school. If you look at the map, and you'll see it here. Well, do you have the one that shows by the color coded by the zones?
I don't know that.
Let me see if I can email
It was in the packet, but because I think by the color coding will show the point I'm going to make. But if you look at that, the current John C. Calhoun zone is extremely small compared to the rest of the elementary school zones. What this does is makes the size of the zone more equal. Nothing more, nothing less. All right?
It should be on the public package, but I emailed it to you just now.
I did too.
In the meantime, did we talk to any parents that don't have kids, and I guess it's hard to track down kids that will be, because is it just?
Don't have any way of.
These came from Howard School.
Right, that's not, so there's really no way to know. Other ones may not.
And I
Yeah,
think
that's the picture there. So if you look, you can see the John C., the current zone in the darker blue, it's just smaller compared to the Long Cane, Westwood, the Diamond Hill, or the Cherokee Trail. And this line makes it more equal. And that's all we're proposing that you do, is make it geographically more equal, comparative, whatever you want, word you want to use.
You also gotta consider that almost 500 yards off of Lake Russell and
It's nothing.
Portland, that's land that nobody can buy, nobody can purchase, nobody can live on, and it goes all the way up through Lounsville and on up. Now, if you take in consideration Lake Secession, that's the total opposite. You're allowed to build and live on that lake where you're not on Lake Russell, so you take away another, almost I'd say a fifth of the whole district for John C. just by Lake Russell being there. So that makes it even smaller, because right now on the map, it looks like it's pretty big, but you gotta take off all that lake area away from that, because nobody lives there. So that's why we propose as a committee to move the lines to make every district for each elementary area as close to equal as we possibly could. I mean, it's still gonna be small, but that's a better move than what we had before.
Is there another route that we can take?
I don't know where you're gonna move it.
All right, Mr. Evans has
What about
something.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Brooks, you chaired that committee, and I think what Dr. Hopkins has did and Dr. Gary has been great. Here's what I'm thinking, the way I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's really not a John C. It is and it isn't. It's a elementary rezoning.
That's correct.
That's what it's
It's a
called.
district-wide.
Elementary rezoning, district-wide, if you wanna call it district-wide, I mean, I know.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, it's not affecting present students today.
Correct.
No.
It's affecting anybody that moves into those areas, and they still will have the option to transfer or go to whatever school they want to go to, correct? Is that correct?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they would have,
Until-
unless the board does away with the inter-district transfer policy, they would have.
Right.
But we have not-
As it stands currently,
As it
you are
stands
correct.
currently, correct. So we hadn't even put that on
Right.
The only thing that we're proposing is the line change to give an opportunity for any growth, which we've already said we have growth coming. And I'm not gonna say that the people that are coming won't live in Calif Falls or Abbeville. I mean, we don't know, they might live all over the county. So they have options to go to whatever school, but those that are already in school, we talked about that lasted for a good 30 minutes in the meeting, that, we would let them stay where they're at.
So there'll be bus transportation for these kids that's already
No.
in school.
The buses will have to follow the zones.
And that's where your problem is.
That's where the problem, all right? You can transfer your child, but you have to provide
That's what it-
transportation.
that's-
We can't run dual bus routes. You just can't. The state won't let you.
Yeah, but that's what your problem is.
Yeah.
And that's what.
That's what they
people
complain about.
in these areas are complaining to me.
That's what,
Because I explained to them that you can, we are school choice. You can go to any school you want to, but you gotta have your own transportation. But most of these people in these areas, it's gonna be difficult for them to provide their own transportation.
Thank you.
And I don't disagree with you. I'm
We don't
saying
disagree
we
with that,
can't
but that's
run
just,
dual bus routes.
That's another policy, that's a different policy than what we were looking at, if I'm correct.
I think we need to try something different.
I mean, do you have a proposal, where are you gonna draw lines for John C. Calhoun and make it more equal? You're not. There's no way to do it.
You got to deal with the people. that
we
live
came down
in
to
these
Diamond Hill up in that way.
How was that line determined? It's such an odd shape that goes up really close to Diamond Hill.
Yeah.
Like, why was
Follow
It
a
follows
road,
a road.
following a road.
The old line used to be at the creek, right?
No, the old line used to go all the way up through Lounsville.
You can throw a rock and hit the Diamond Hill line presently at John C. Calhoun.
Diamond Hill.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, right now.
I was just
you can-
wondering
That's what I'm
why it
saying.
had that
So I take it up
awkward
that way.
But
dip.
it would follow
That was
Instead
the
of-
easiest way to follow a highway, an actual road, instead of cutting through a pasture. Yeah. Or cutting through a wood line or whatever.
Well, let me ask you a question. How many, do you got an idea in terms of current enrollment? How many children are students? are impacted? You may have put this,
We've got 12 families,
12 families.
and some of those families had one child, some had a couple of children.
Okay.
Some had children who were in school and one more about to start school. So
Were
I
a
would
large
say
majority
20
of them?
kids,
Okay.
maybe by these 12 families.
But 12 families, yeah, that's, so that, the jut up is what I'll call it. Are a lot of those in that area?
Yeah, that's why.
That's why it's there.
The committee
Okay.
moved it like that, because going straight across there,
It wasn't.
that number's gonna drop.
So there's, I don't know, I'm just gonna get half of them are saying that little bump or more.
I don't know if there's half,
Yeah.
there's a
Several.
few, and we're talking about 12 anyway, so you got 4 or 5 over there, I believe.
Most of those kids go to a church, especially on Watch Road, they go to the church that sits there.
Right there.
Yes, sir.
Right in that area. And, they're not happy with that. They say, you need to do.
Well, I got
Not at
that
all.
phone
He
calls.
look crazy. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think you did your due diligence, I think.
Well, I wanted to get feedback,
Yep.
and I didn't think, and we didn't get any feedback from the letter or phone calls or emails, so from there. So
Right.
we wanted to make sure we heard from them, so we tried to contact each of them by phone.
But you know, a lot of these parents won't come to you. They won't even come to
No,
the
come to
district
us.
Yes,
office.
sir, I understand.
But they will come.
Come to us.
They know where I live.
They see me riding by and they stop you in a minute.
Follow my
Hey,
directive.
But I'll get back to the original point. It was the purpose of this, in essence, was to make the areas, the geographical areas, more equal.
More equal,
Yeah,
more in line
whatever
with
word
each
you
other.
use. Really, that's the only reason.
Yeah.
And
That and hopefully for future growth for
For
the
future
area
growth.
which John C. is in.
because I mean, I think at the essence of it, the understanding and realization that that line between, the zoning line between John C. and Diamond Hill is literally a rock throw from John C. Elementary. So that just don't seem right.
It's just
You know,
just past
it don't
if I'm
seem
right, well, it's just past the city limit sign, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And the city limit sign's right.
Right.
You can almost see it from standing at school.
Yeah.
It just that don't seem right. I agree. And I don't know how long it's been like that.
Would we solve that without that jut out?
There's not really a road. I mean, you're gonna either come down and then go back up and jet up smaller, or you're gonna jet up right there.
I could just see how the people, I mean, you're so close to Diamond Hill, and now you're telling them they have to go to John C.
It's not about.
It's not about having to go.
It's not
No,
about.
I know, but
It's
I
about
understand that
population.
they have.
It's about population. It's just like our districts. You know, our districts are divided up by population numbers, and this was not equal.
Oh, well, you just said geographic, that's why I
Well,
was asking. If
geographic,
it was
yeah.
just geographical, then we wouldn't need that
Yeah.
jut. We did that to get more students, right?
But you have to follow some type of road to make it,
That's the point.
you know, to have transportation or whatever.
Well, there are some other roads in there, right? I mean,
Not
I'm just
really.
asking,
It
I'm not,
should be.
not really?
I mean, there's some dirt roads, but I don't
Oh, those
think,
are dirt roads?
I don't think Skip wants our bus drivers going down a dirt road, you know, that might not be
Okay.
drivable.
Well, I think it's just like Miss Edelwine, the word she just used, or in that, I'm having to move my kid. I think that's the way
That's what I'm
you're
looking
doing
at.
it,
Yeah.
although that may
That's how they
not
do
be.
it.
But if they can't get transportation,
Right.
They are
And so
having
that's
to.
what happens, yeah. So,
Yep. Well, it was the same thing when the lines were moved to what it is currently. The kids that were from that area that's now Diamond Hill, that were going to John C. that didn't have transportation, were now having to go from right there, and if you see John C.'s driveway to Diamond Hill. And I know that's not this administration's doings, but it's the same, it's just, we're not reversing it, we're just trying to make it more equal and more
Right.
geographical right for the whole county and for future growth. And we're not telling those, I know y'all gonna say transportation, we're not telling them they have to do it. We're just telling them that's gonna be the new lines for the upcoming school year. And that was the proposal that the three people on the committee and the administration come up with.
I don't disagree with it, I was just wondering if
Yeah.
that's our goal, if that would appease everybody, but.
Basically, if you say you don't have to do this, well, what's the purpose? if these families that we're not going.
Well, I mean,
So-
we got people that live in the Cherokee Trail in the area that are going to Long Cane. I mean, we don't make.
But they are providing their own transportation.
Yes.
And you have to look at the demographics of the people that live in these areas. And if you say, we're not gonna provide you with bus transportation, this is what I'm hearing. Then I don't have a choice. But now, if I was able to, if the people in these areas were affluent, and they wouldn't care what, they can provide transportation for their children, but they can't. And this is what they're telling me. And
But do you understand what I said on the front end? If you look at the map, the purpose of this is to make the areas more geographically equitable, right? It's gonna affect some families. That's just a fact. If you move any line, it affects families, right?
Can I, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Gary, have we talked to Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts on it?
We want to educate children in Annandale County. Do I need students? 100,000%, I need students. My zoning right now is teeny tiny in comparison to everyone else.
Yes, sir.
The folks that are squabbling about wanting to come there, if they came and checked the school out, they might have a different idea. Because I'm afraid there's a bad idea out there of what the school is, and it's not that way.
Right.
I would encourage each one and every last one of you to come to my school and see it's a quality place. Absolutely top shelf.
I have one other question. What
That's
happens
all
to
we need
the,
here.
what happens to the middle school kids when they get to the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
That line.
The John C. goes to
Yeah, I think
right
it's
middle.
right middle.
Yeah. If you look at the high school zones,
So those kids are bused. If they're in, let me say it this way, if they're in the John C. Elementary school zone,
They go to right.
when they get to be in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade,
They go to right.
then the buses provide them transportation to right middle.
Yes.
The transportation would be if you're zoned for Diamond Hill presently, and that line juts out and moves that, then those students that move into that area, there'd be, if they live in that, and they will be bused to Diamond, they would be bused to John C. If they're zoned for John C, where they had been going to Diamond Hill.
For the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
No, for elementary schools. That's the only part of the transportation that it's changing.
Changing. Yeah, it's not gonna change your middle school or high school.
Does that make sense?
Matter of fact, the high school line, if I'm not mistaken, goes straight down to 4-lane, doesn't
It
it?
doesn't affect the middle school students.
Basically, if you're on the,
Right?
going from California, if you're on the left, you go to Abbeville, if you're on the right, you go to Dixon.
Affect the middle school students.
Yes, last
Latimer Road, okay, so it's a little higher up, okay.
Does it affect the middle school students, Dr. Hopkins?
There's your high school and middle school line right there.
So these kids in this, that's look like we're taking up a portion of Westwood attendance area. These
And Diamond Hill.
And,
and down here. Okay, so these kids, they can, when they get to be high schools, middle school students, where will they go now?
right middle,
Right middle. So
Well, except for those
above
on
Latimer
that
Road.
Diamond Hill, they would be going to Dixie.
okay.
Flip back to the high school, well, look, there it is, right there. That's your high school and middle school zone right there, on the screen.
So it seems like buses will be going in these areas. We got buses.
So, I mean, there would have to be some alterations.
Yeah, where does that line, this was a question, where does the line that's proposed to be changed along Latimer Road overlay onto that map? I think that's part of the question.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
that-
Go put that back on. So,
Keep moving.
what leave it right there?
Keep moving, keep moving.
Trying to give you both pictures.
No, so this right here is the road, what road?
That's 71.
71, so that jut out comes right below that, cuts off right here.
It comes back down.
And that
That's
Mitchell
Fair-
Place Road?
That's Fairfield
Is
Church.
that
Church,
Mitchell?
Fairfield Church Road.
Fairfield, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't go all the way.
Okay.
So then the area that you're taking in, some of it, at least in that little area, those kids will go K through 5 at John C., and then they will go to Dixie High School.
Right. And so.
Unless you make sure that lines match up some kind of way.
Unless you change the.
High school lines too.
And those, out of the responses you got, was primarily in that little jut out area?
No, I think Watts Road.
There were a good number on Watts Road.
Yeah, the Watch Road people,
Main one.
They were,
So
they
why
were
not
milking.
expand?
And I actually had the same person that came by and told me about, having family in all three different families in the impacted areas that wanted the families grandfathered in, not just the current students. They were asking if they needed to speak tonight. On behalf, I told them the process that they could come, but she was very upset about the potential for, we're saying they're grandfathered in, but they're really believing that, and if they can't provide transportation, they are going to be forced.
That's right. Okay, well, we'll have an opportunity later in the meeting.
Then that's it, right? Go ahead and do.
Happens, thank you.
Thank you, Don, for providing that. I'd like to thank the committee that was working on that too. That was, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Bryson, and myself, on the next section. Discussion action items. First reading for policy GCLE, unencumbered time.
Okay, we got a memorandum from the State Department, on the recent model policy adopted by the State Board of Education on January 17th, 2023 regarding unencumbered time. As of January 17th, 2023, the local school board should adopt a policy at a regularly scheduled meeting within 3 months. The policy must include, at minimum, the policy of the State Board of Education, but also may include additional provisions. Once the policy is adopted, the local school board must submit this policy and subsequent revisions to the Department of Education within 30 days of adoption. And what I've included in here is the model policy from the university.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve policy GCLE, first reading.
second motion.
We have a motion and a second for policy GCLE approval. Any discussion on that matter? Yes.
Discussion. This is K through 5, right?
Yes. Yes.
Just K through 5. All right, so, excuse me for one moment. Is this from, okay, special needs. So is this from our attorneys basically, or is this like from state law?
This from the state.
Okay. So,
School board association.
so I ain't trying to be facetious. I'm just reading this for what I'm reading it for, but it says the intentional failure of the principal to provide eligible teachers with 30 minutes of unencumbered time may result in appropriate action under the district's disciplinary policy. So, I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. And then below that, what really sounds bad, it says the intentional failure of the local school board to provide eligible teachers with the required 30 minutes of unencumbered time may subject the board to penalties as described by law. What are those penalties?
Paddling.
Well, no, but the point I'm getting to is it don't say nothing about the superintendent in between there.
Wasn't that a good policy?
So I don't know. I think y'all took what the attorney said I thought to do.
You got it verbatim.
All right.
And I can show you the email.
No, but seriously, but really,
Yeah.
what? That's it gives some exceptions, but it just says a result of extreme or unavoidable circumstances. So what is that and who defines it? I mean, that's a serious
I
question.
think
So,
Dr. Gary asked Miss Ashley to check recently and see if we were good with this policy, and
I did, I checked with all of our K through 5 principals, and they all agree that they're currently, this is in place most of the time, but they're very well aware that next year it will be the practice. We've even had a few questions that we've just worked through, but they are all willing to, make sure that it occurred.
Well,
Mainly, the biggest things is just some of the sometimes during their planning, the meetings or IEP meetings or 504 meetings are taking place, and instead they're just gonna have to.
well, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, it doesn't take, but everybody can try to do everything right, and one, I won't call it mistreat a teacher, but let's just say a teacher they feel that this hasn't been applied to them, and then they have a complaint. So, I get it's kind of a new thing, and they've been trying to work through this, but I just want to point out those.
And we would
those
work with
items.
them, that's,
Because I think it's needed.
The language is a willful not doing it. And I'm not gonna call the district, but I heard a superintendent in my superintendent meeting said that I'm not doing this, and he said it to the State Department.
Oh, wow.
I'm not that brazen. But you see what I'm saying? Willfully to not follow it is not a good approach. Our guys are very willing, and I appreciate the attitude, so I think the language is written for the renegades who do not plan on following this policy.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's a bill going through that's gonna make it an actual period time instead of just 30 minutes, and that's going to the House or Senate.
I haven't seen that.
I think it's going through.
But I do know it's definitely a conversation across
Oh, yeah.
the state. Every time we have a meeting, this is the big conversation about how we're gonna ensure this is, and your question has actually been one of the things that a lot of the districts have discussed. What does that mean, and how's that gonna follow?
Yeah.
It was brought up a lot last night. Ms. Bruce, you had a question?
I don't know the question as much as a comment. What you were reading, such circumstances could include but are not limited to an emergency drill, insufficient number of staff, substitute teachers to maintain instructions. As a board, you can change the wording, you can delete, you can add to, if we want to add a line down there that says, superintendent's responsible for any, negative, we can add that, Or,
straight from the principal to the board.
but, but all kidding aside, if you want to say, no, we really want to secure this time for our teachers, we could strike, we could say they're not going to be pulled from their 30 minutes to be a substitute. Now, that's being a little bit harsh, I'll be honest, coming from the husband of a teacher. Sometimes you have to do that because you can't get subs in. I fully understand all of that. So I think we have to be careful with the restrictiveness of the language and just hope we can follow it as well as we can and teachers get their time. I think that's the intent of it,
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the first reading of policy GCLE, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Nobody? That passes. Textbook adoption.
So you guys have, the current curriculum that we use in our K-4 program is being retired and no longer being used, so we have to, the state has given us, the opportunity or proposed to us about adopting a new textbook. So that is the textbook that our 4K teachers, as well as myself and instructional coaches have looked at, based on the needs of the K-4 students, and they decided that was the best fit as a resource to support their classrooms.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the K-4 curriculum.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the K-4 curriculum. Any discussion, question?
I have a question. I hope this is a stupid question. It doesn't teach them about like their sexuality and all, okay. I had a lot of questions about that. when
No,
I
ma'am,
was
but if you
kicking
ever,
it.
I mean, anytime for textbooks, if you ever have questions, we do get samples, and we have those for you to preview. But there is some social emotional things in there, but it has nothing to do with those things.
Any other questions?
Well, I wasn't gonna vote for it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the K-4 curriculum, raise your right hand. All those opposed? That passes. Personnel.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the administration recommendations of one induction contract and one continuing contract.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve one induction contract and one continuing contract. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving one induction and one continuing contract, please raise your right hand. All opposed? No? Okay. Then we move on to how do I even call it that? Just attendance zoning lines. Right now we're calling the John C.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table, in light of tonight's discussion and hearing from Mr. Scott, hearing from board members, and hearing a report from Dr. Hopkins, I move that we table that action item to a later date.
Second motion.
Have a motion and a second to table voting on the John C. zoning lines. Any questions or concerns? Any comments? No? All those in favor of tabling this to a later date, would you like to pick a date?
Well, I think it needs some further discussion to understand in my opinion, understand bus lines, understand busing. The concerns that Mr. Tisdale brought up, I think, are valid. I think Mr. Scott he does have a great school over there, and I think everybody recognizes that. I think we need to, the committee did a great job. I think the recommendation's great. I think hearing from the parents that responded, personally, I think that enlightens us a little bit. But to get a better clarity of the roads and how it affect from transitioning from one school to another school, I think we need to always put the student first, as Mr. Tisdale often comments. Let's put the child sitting in the chair right there before we make that decision and see how that affects. And that's my opinion. I certainly, that you can vote this up or down and whatever you want to do. That's fine with me.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
Well, my comment was this a policy, it's a potential policy change anyway, right? Which kind of goes back to our initial discussion. So there would have had to have been a first reading.
Right.
Correct.
And a second reading anyway.
Yeah.
And give the public an
So
opportunity.
we were gonna table it one way or the other.
Right.
All right, so I will make a comment then, since you brought up that it's a policy. I think what the problem with, if you table this, I'm just trying to think for just a second. What we have is, because this is a policy, if you table this, you essentially, this is done for, all right? But because it's a policy change, I would like to request that next month's agenda have a discussion action item, amend board policy, and I think it's, what is it, JCA-E attendance zone? I think is that the correct policy?
That's right.
Amend the board policy, and it'll be first reading. You put that on the agenda as the action item, because it'll have to have 2 readings if it passes first reading.
Hold on.
Well,
You gonna have, if we're not going, you have to not table it to do that.
No.
let's table this existing action item.
And you don't ever have to do anything else with this.
But-
You table it and you're done with it.
But no, what I'm saying is could we not table it and then and go ahead and vote, however how you want to vote?
Yeah.
And then request for information, Mr. Brooks? Or,
Yeah, I'll request that under request for information.
I mean, that'd be
that
the
put on
appropriate
it.
place, so it's
Yeah.
on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Sounds good, all right. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes.
Do you want me to dig further and find out transportation impacts on
Yeah.
families?
I believe that's, I mean, personally, that's what I said. I'd like to know how it's gonna affect
Each
families.
individual family, their kids.
How the
can you
routes.
If this zone is moved, can you provide transportation?
You're talking 12 families.
Yes.
Is that fair? I mean, I don't want to be the one. I mean, y'all agree?
I agree.
I agree with you.
All right. We have a motion and a second to table the JCC zoning. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? So we'll table it, and that has been tabled. All right? That is all our discussion action items. We request for information. Before you do yours, y'all do not forget about your ethics part, your, I can't think what it's called. It's gotta be done
Statement
by
of
the end of
economic
March.
interest.
The what?
Statement of
Statement of
economic interest.
It has to be done by March.
Is that the one
31st,
already?
okay?
Is that the one already had?
Don't forget that. All right.
It's online, you have to go on there and do it
That's what
every
I'm
year.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one you have to do every year by March.
or they'll
31st.
fine you.
All right. Any requests for information?
Now, let me request, as an agenda item for next month, I would like to see, what did I just say? Amend board policy JCA-E, school board,
The
whatever.
attendance.
Zoning,
On the attendance on.
yeah, whatever it is. First reading, yes, sir.
Any other requests for information?
I moved it with you.
All right, I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, stand.
Third, too.